Yeah, I sent you the link, bro. All right, looks like we are live, and secretly over here to the edge of me, I have Adam Lohr sitting in front of the piano. Adam's not interested. Oh, it looks like we got Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey,
how you doing,
how's it
man?
going?
We got had to drive over and do something very what do you call that? We had to do something really analog and actually have an in real life interview because Hangouts wasn't going to work for Adam Lohr, but figured we'd talk about the weirdness of people getting caught for being sexually inappropriate, man. And then when it hits
other people being caught for being sexually inappropriate.
Yeah. Other people, not us.
We're not here to interview Adam Lohr about being sexually inappropriate. Nice way to start off the show. We're here live with Adam Lohr talking about sexually inappropriate things.
That's true, but it's sexually inappropriate things having to do with specifically with the artist John Kay.
Yeah.
And Adam already kind of did a little bit of input on that on his own YouTube channel. If you're not familiar with Adam, please check him out. Go find his YouTube and subscribe. He does a lot of various stuff, but mostly focused on comic drawing and commentary about art in general.
And music too. Like my channel is mostly like cartooning and my songs.
Right.
That's
yeah.
like the main focus of it.
Yeah, and that's one of my main things I do, Adam, is I'll go like I'll be sitting at work or whatever, and I'll go go to your channel and pull up a song that I love because you have written so many songs that I really love. So, and I do that at work, or I'll do that, But so I do have some secret songs of yours on my computer that are not available on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so did you have any hint or clue about this John Kay nonsense before it came out in the press?
Yeah, everyone. Oh, if you're a fan of John Kay, a lot of people hated John Kay, and like as a fan of John Kay, you're like you have to kind of like you find yourself defending him constantly.
Right.
But I think that some people knew about it, some people didn't. I've seen like kind of hints of things. Like he was interviewed on Howard Stern, and he just made like kind of weird jokes about underage characters and stuff, and it's kind of like that's kind of a weird.
Really, on Howard Stern,
that's like a red flag in retrospect. Looking back, it's like, oh well, how did you not know that? But I think just the severity of how bad it really was is just like shocking to everyone that didn't know.
Yeah. So do you think if this Harvey Weinstein Hollywood stuff wouldn't have happened, that it would have just continued to float and most people would never know?
Probably, yeah.
So it makes me curious, this whole thing, because I don't really trust anything to be 100% organic or just like, I know a lot of people think that the world is.
This is something that's interesting about that is John Kay was found with 10-year-old child pornography on his computer and like had phone sex with 13-year-old girls and stuff.
Wow.
And the way that they advertised it was sexual harassment in the workplace. This guy is is harassing people and preying on them in the workplace. Like they're using that same angle of the Me Too movement.
Right.
Of like branding it, but it's like, what the fuck? Like what he did is so much worse than just that.
Yeah. See,
and I think that kind of information, the way they're branding it, it's like, I think it causes some people to just be like, well, this is just another like stupid like sex scandal thing. Like,
yeah, when really it's almost like, to me, that's almost like they're using his real case as a really strange kind of damage control. Because if you study the intelligence agencies and everything, what they call it is a limited hangout. So a limited hangout would be intentionally publishing or disseminating a small amount of the information that might still be damning and bad, but that you do that to make a big scene about it. And then the rest of the big news that, if something's really bad, like say they murdered 100,000 people,
right.
They admit to 10,000 dying and make a big deal out of it. And then they have opportunity to like, they kind of use that as a smokescreen. And it sounds like that might be.
I don't know if it's like that. It's just, you have to read like 40 paragraphs until they tell you the worst part at the end.
Yeah. Cause I read one article though. I don't remember what the site was on. Cause as soon as I saw it, what I did is I think I messaged you and then I tagged you in a thread on Twitter. I don't know how much you actually look at Twitter because I don't see, you don't seem like you're super active on Twitter. So, but the thread I tagged you in, that girl had personal experience with John Kay. I don't remember her name. She's an artist on Twitter, and her boyfriend was like a writer, and so they're kind of like a art team together. But she had done fan art for John Kay, and he had contacted her to see if she wanted to come essentially be his apprentice. And when she considered it and made it known to other artists in her sphere, more than one person warded her off of him and came and gave her personal information about, like, don't do it. He'll try and make you into like his underage girlfriend character, and he'll have 5 or 6 young men who are also wanting to work with him, and he'll play you off of them, like, be jealous of me because I have the young pretty girl and you guys are my plebs.
This is what she said after the news hit.
Well, yeah, she came out. That's how it went too. She was like, "Now that this is in the news, I feel comfortable to tell my side of the story."
Right. See, that's a problem. Like, they'll kind of there'll be rumors about, oh, well, don't work with John Kay, but then it's like they don't really say explicitly why. And he's also known for being just a total asshole of a director and stuff. So it's like, even just that, like, I almost like went to work with John Kay. Like, he's started up studios a couple times where I could have gone and like trained and worked with him, and I knew, like, if I was in that condition, like I probably would be in a few experiences where he was just fucking like raging asshole, and I would probably like be pissed off at him. But I didn't know it was like sex crimes.
Right. No, I mean, right. It's anyone could be an eccentric director in any context, like if some, just girls in ballet class, like when I used to dance jazz when I was young and in high school and stuff, the dance instructor would get nutty 2 weeks before a performance, whereas maybe most of the time she'd be nice, and then she'd just be like a raving bitch to get us all ready for the performance. So it's pretty common for your teacher or your director to potentially have eccentric and outlandish behavior, especially if you're under a deadline. But that's a far, far cry from, oh yeah, by the way, I also have child pornography on my computer and all this other terrible shit. So I saw that you ripped up at least one part of memorabilia or art. So what was that? Well, I didn't.
Okay, so Ren and Stimpy, the original series, was like for kids on Nickelodeon,
right? And
then later on, they did the new version, which was for adults.
Oh, okay.
And it's like R-rated. It's like pornographic.
Okay.
Have you seen?
No, I didn't know. No, I didn't know.
They did that on the Spike network, like the only network for men. It was like they were just rebooting. They were like booting. They were starting that new channel, and so they did like, I don't know, 6 new episodes or something like that of those. Where some of them, like for example, one of the episodes is called Naked Beach Frenzy.
Okay.
And it's like Ren and Stimpy, like washing like naked women's like soapy boobs and stuff. Or like there's one where
so it's still Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah,
just
it's Ren and Stimpy,
themes.
but it's called Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon. One of the episodes is Ren and Stimpy. You remember the Fire Dog episode?
Yeah.
Okay. The fire chief in that is based on Ralph Bakshi. You know Ralph Bakshi?
Yeah, I know Ralph Bakshi.
Okay, so in Fire Dogs 2, the chief transforms into actual Ralph Bakshi, and they go hang out with him in his apartment, and he's like got a girl coming over, and it's all this like weird sex stuff, and he's like shitting in the toilet, and it's like weird.
Yeah.
So that was what I ripped up, which has like this gross like drawing of this girl on the cover and stuff, and it's just like, I don't know. That was like more like John Kay's like version of Ren and Stimpy.
Right.
Like the original Ren and Stimpy, like John Kay created it, but so many other people were involved, and they were kind of, reining in a lot more like what he was.
Oh, right. I mean, like any good project, usually group projects always have, for the most part, have a better vibe than solo work. Very few people can all by themselves produce something that doesn't come off wonky or weird, or I'd say actually you're an exception to that rule in my realm of artists or people I respect or love their work. You effectively work alone, Whereas I feel like my songwriting or playing versus me and Nathan, or me, Nathan and Jim, or me and back in the day with the Panacea or whatever, that there was something more that comes out of that. And I had studied some Ren and Stimpy stuff way back in the day, so I knew that there was a lot of input from other artists. That, you know, that it wasn't just like everyone doing exactly what John Kay told them to do.
Well, the problem is, okay, this is the issue. Like, it's complicated. Okay. It was everyone doing what John Kay said, and like people like believed in him. Like they saw he was like a cult leader. He was like a sociopathic, like people like bought into his. He's like the.
I remember that in the one little clip. I didn't make it all the way to the end of your last video, but you read a part of an article that was describing that the man had said.
Yeah, that's Bill Ray. That, you know, the background paintings, like the close-ups and stuff. That's.
Bill Ray is his name.
Yeah. And he does like a lot of Mad Magazine artwork now, and like fine art and stuff. He's an amazing artist.
Have you been in contact with Bill Ray?
He posts on Facebook, so I mean he may have like
he might
respond to one thing one time.
Yeah,
but
it's not like you've never been in regular correspondence. I was just curious because I know that I found out through Jim that and I think that you and I have this similar quality that. Most people are passive takers of information from things that they like, and they don't necessarily correspond. Whereas if I go listen to a podcast or enjoy someone's work or whatever, I really have the tendency to hit them up, you know, be like, hey, thanks, I like that. And I know that you have that history in the past.
There are some people that worked on Ren and Stimpy that have like read Birdmouth and like commented on it and like made like pickle jokes and things like that.
Yeah, and that's why I ask. And I know that you paid for one of Bashki's Kickstarters and got him to critique your work. I remember that story a bit.
That was another thing that, like, there's a lot of reasons why people already were like pissed off at John Kay, but one of the reasons that a lot of people were like kind of bad mouthing him before this whole scandal was he did a Kickstarter for a cartoon called Cans Without Labels. Did you see that?
No.
It's like it wasn't Ren and Stimpy, but it was like George Liquor. Do you remember George Liquor, the like Republican guy? He's like a gun nut.
In the cartoon?
Yeah. Remember the dog show episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's George Liquor.
Okay. Yeah, he's one of my favorite Ren and Stimpy characters.
So anyways, he like got this funded, and it just was like 10 years, and it still hasn't been done and stuff like that.
So just a second, Adam. It was kind of loud for just a second, Jim, so I muted you. But if you want to jump in, just push the unmute button. There should be a.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's
was Jim talk? I didn't even.
Yeah, Jim's in here with us. He's just listening to us.
I haven't heard
so, you know, he hasn't said anything, so you know. I mean, so.
I'm just listening.
Yeah, and anyone watching this or listening to this, just know that that the way we have it set up right now, Adam can't hear the audio the same way that you can. He can just hear me talking to him. So
I have a question for you guys about this. I'm not sure if you.
I can relay the question for you. Jim has a question. Go ahead.
So, why did this all come out now? It seems like stuff that happened, you know, over years. And what is the impetus that's bringing it out right now? So
Jim's question is, why do you think this is coming out now? If people have known, and
it's the Me Too movement.
It's the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
So it's under the bus.
Well, it's part of this whole Me Too thing with all of the, you know, it's like that time right now where the whole Harvey Weinstein scandal, and then lots of people are confessing and admitting that they know of inappropriate things that people are doing. And I've seen it very much slanted towards, really, in my opinion, what I've seen on Twitter and other social media, that it's pretty slanted towards just empowering and encouraging women, because men say, oh yeah, I got raped too, and like a lot of the time they don't get all bashed down.
It seems like a witch hunt, you know, like in the opposite, sort of. Like, while it's all fired up, I mean, you have more or less proof for whatever happens. I mean, over years, things kind of settle, and I don't know, it's just.
No, I agree. Jim says it's kind of like a witch hunt. I tried to turn this headphone.
That's the problem. Like,
there
is a witch hunt aspect to the Me Too movement, where I think they're taking minor transgressions in some instances and kind of exaggerating it.
Yeah.
And then that really undermines when there is a serious problem. It's all just grouped in. The word predator can mean anything from someone wanting to pick someone up at a bar
all the way
to like a literal child rapist.
Yeah.
Like there's no distinction.
Yeah. That's why I would compare it. Just, you know, in my mind, that immediately again makes me think of a limited hangout type situation where they're using it as smoke and cover, potentially. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily true, but it's kind of, the whole thing's really fishy and weird in my opinion. Not just specifically the John K. thing. I mean, the whole Me Too, the whole way all of it's been handled and dealt with, and it's all coming right on the back of the total strangeness of whatever the hell you want to call Pizzagate. You know, so like there's all these accusations of it. Do you know anything about that?
I've heard that several times, but I just never paid attention to it.
Well, it's probably better to not pay attention.
Yeah. Don't try Googling it.
Yeah, it's just
a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, to me, to really get your head around even what the accusations for Pizzagate are takes like some researching skills, because it's, once again, it's all convoluted and weird. It's not like you can go find an easy, simple answer to the question, what are they talking about? You know? But anyway, so I saw a lot of other people kind of do, like I saw another dude do the same thing you did. Like it evoked a strong reaction in the fans of Ren and Stimpy, obviously in the fans of John K. Like people just throwing their memorabilia in the garbage and video
What did you see someone who had a George Liquor doll?
Yeah.
So that's my friend Josh. He actually did a drawing of Birdmouth.
Okay. So you know that guy?
Yeah, I know him. I was actually surprised because I was like, when I first heard the news, I actually thought of Josh, because it's like we both like kind of defended John K when people talk shit, you know. Right. And I was like, oh man, like I was thinking about Josh because I was like, he's gonna think less of me. Like I'm gonna turn my back on John K and he's gonna be like, oh, you're a traitor or something. And I was really like proud of him to see like his immediate reaction was just like, fuck this. This stuff I got directly from John and he signed it and everything. Like I'll keep my Ren and Stimpy DVDs and stuff, but like this is dirty. He just threw it out.
You know, and I didn't realize it was even that far. I just figured he was an artist who had like, I mean, even if you just went and bought that stuff that he threw away, it's expensive. It's not toys. It's art. It's expensive art, as far as, you know, not like super expensive fine art, but it's expensive art. And then if it's also John K signed it and everything, to me, that's a cathartic step to be like, you know what, man? We tried our best to like love and appreciate and respect you, and fuck you because you're a disgusting pig, you know? I mean,
a lot of people talk, like I had this for like 4 days. I just felt like I was about to puke, like immediately. Yeah. And I was just like, I wanted that shit away from me. Like I have a Ren and Stimpy shirt on right now. I just don't want it anywhere in my sight. Yeah. You know? And it just made me feel like I was like part of it, and I just felt disgusted by that. And it's complicated though, because it's like, then you have to kind of separate that from, there's all these other artists that are involved with Ren and Stimpy that weren't complicit in it. Right. So it's like you still respect them, but it's like, I don't know, it's just like it's a weird complicated.
Oh no, yeah, it makes it this horrible gray area mishmash. Whereas most people, especially if that, I mean, I see the whole reason I think this is reasonable to talk to you about is because you're an up-and-coming artist, you know, and I know you to be actually knowledgeable and know people behind the scenes just like anybody does, you know. If you might not be famous, but if you are making an effort and making way, you end up with a lot of connections behind the scenes to people that other people would imagine are unapproachable or untouchable, which just isn't the case, you know. It's not necessarily that way, people, until you get so huge that, you know, you have an entourage and everything. But it's not like it's impossible to be in touch even with someone like John K. You know, maybe if he wasn't insane. It sounds like he was pretty insane. But I had another question there, and
I think John K. is literally like he's an insane person. He's a sociopath. Like he has mental issues, and that comment from Bill Ray, he was kind of talking about how I don't know if you got that far into the video, but he talks about this trifecta where it's like he was kind of normal and stable during Ren and Stimpy, and then he lost his normal age girlfriend of the time. He lost the show, like he got kicked off the show. Right. And one other thing I can't remember was like all these three things at once, and he just kind of like lost it.
Yeah, and he didn't recover from that. So really, Yeah, I did make it that far. I think we made it almost to the end, either that or we did make it to the end, but I didn't catch like the last 10 minutes because I think we were at work, so something might happen. But that I remember that, and it reminds me of other people I've known in my life that they appear to be okay until blank. And then it turns out that everything that they were doing was really kind of a ruse. And I'm not going to use any example because I'm not going to drop anybody's name or anything. But you know what I mean? That like people can do that. They didn't even have to be, in my opinion, full-blown sociopath. But there's this like level of narcissism and sociopathy that the boat rocks really hard, and then all of a sudden the mask drops.
Yeah.
And it turns out like, oh my God, I did all I could to defend or support you. I helped you out. Maybe I gave you money or any, or a place to stay. And then it turns out like, oh no, I would have never done any of that if I'd have known how you really are.
Yeah.
And so when you're as big as John Kay, then that's like, he just like cratered a whole bunch of people's love and appreciation for anything he'd ever done, and tarnished the names of anyone who ever helped him on the way. I wonder, do you know, I haven't followed up on any of it. Do you know if there's any potential for him to actually be held accountable in any way? That's another thing I'm interested about all this stuff. I've not yet seen any evidence of someone being held accountable so far that has a name. Now, I don't doubt that people that aren't super famous probably, they got caught up doing bad shit. But as far as like, obviously, Harvey Weinstein, where's he at? I don't see, they didn't throw him in handcuffs and stick him in a jail cell. And
so I don't know anything that anybody else doesn't already know from the article, but basically in that article it says that Katie Rice is the artist that found pornography on his computer.
Okay.
And she was also one of the victims of him, like where she was, I think she was the kind of older, but she was like in her later teenage years when they were dating, versus like this other girl who was like, he like flew down to her 12th or 13th birthday party to try to like get with her.
How strange.
Like he got fan mail and his reaction was, oh, I'll fly to this girl's birthday to try to have sex with her.
That's insane.
But Katie Rice,
the parents didn't like notice or anything. That was, I don't know. It's
weird because
off topic, but
there's like, it's weird because it's like you. So recently I saw this comic that Bill Ray did about John Kay being like a pedophile. I didn't know this, but he has this comic where he's like, he has a character that's like obviously based on John Kay, like after the fact, after it's like.
Right. In retrospect, you can say, okay, so.
And he talks about like getting a permission slip from the parents and things like that. So I don't know to what extent it's like, it seems like maybe the parents were okay with that, but.
Unfortunately, that's it. If you look into this kind of stuff, that's really not that uncommon, unfortunately. Like a good example would be that like way back in the day, Ted Nugent was like, had the hots for some 17-year-old girl. So he actually like went to the parents and took legal guardianship of this girl when she was 17 so that he could, have her as his little girlfriend toy or whatever. And that's like a famous case. I'm not bringing that up as like, but so it's not really that uncommon.
Yeah.
From something as simple and perverted as that, all the way to people prostituting out their children or even selling them into slavery is unfortunately not unheard of.
But from what I understand, when she found like stuff on his computer, she like filed a report later, and I think it was like after like trying to file a report, they couldn't really do anything because she kind of waited until more like it was more kind of socially acceptable to quote unquote ruin someone's life by bringing this to surface,
Right. So she
was like brainwashed since she was a child to listen to anything he said. So it's like she's not clear-minded about it at the time.
Well, because you said that she was also one of his victims.
Yeah.
And so was she like a girlfriend of his still at that point in time, or like she was working for him, or I don't know who you said her name was Rice. I don't remember.
Katie Rice. She's an artist. I'm not sure I don't have the timeline all figured out, but I think if I understand correctly that at that time that would have been like early 2000s maybe, and that they were in like a relationship.
Oh, so she waited that long. So she waited essentially for this Me Too movement before she did anything.
I think the article says that it was like, yeah, like recently, like maybe like last year or something, that they tried to take legal action about it.
So strange.
Because I mean, I can only imagine like how terrified she must, because like for me, just to say, I don't like John Kay and like, I don't support John Kay as a cartoonist. Like, I'm afraid to say that. Like, there's a lot of people that I know on Facebook and stuff that I talk to on a regular basis and that I'm just like involved with in the community, that's like, I can't be against John Kay and be friends with this guy still.
Yeah.
So even just that, it's like, I'm like terrified of even like facing that and admitting that. So for her to like, I can't, that's like just a tiny percentage of what she must
Oh yeah, that right.
feel, you know?
Yeah, that's the same as if it was her, almost the equivalent of it feeling like your life is at risk. And for all we know, her life might actually be at risk. We don't know how nuts John Kay ever really was acting, whether or not he's wielding a gun or being
crazy, see, that's the thing. Like,
so,
his cartoons are so crazy, and then they got people like having these like psychotic breaks, and you think it's like a funny, exaggerated cartoon, and now it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's probably just
I wonder how
projection of his life.
Yeah. I
wonder if he has nipples on his knees.
Yeah.
Sorry, I try to make light of it a little bit because it sucks. I mean, I'm just like the most casual fan, you know, someone who, because you guys were into it and we watched it, but I still loved Ren and Stimpy. So I saw that and I'm like, well, shit. And I thought, well, I have to tell Adam. I assume he knows, but I have to tell him. And then the more you learn, like the worse it gets. Like, and of course now anyone still defending him or trying to hold him up is going to look pretty stupid and weird. You're going to look complicit is what you look. As, you know, if you're like, well, I don't care. Well, like, what do you mean you don't care? Where's your moral compass at all? If you know.
I have seen a couple people, like fans and stuff, that are just like, oh, it's BuzzFeed. You know, I think that's another problem too. BuzzFeed does not have a good reputation for being a reliable source. So that is also adding to like, when I started reading that article, I was like, this is just more Louis C.K. bullshit. Like the same stuff that they just keep doing to these people where it's like someone did something bad, but it's not like life-shattering.
Right, no, because I saw that with Louis C.K. I thought, well, you know, it doesn't surprise me because Louis C.K. is pretty off and morbid. But it's not like the reports where he like pinned someone against the wall and violently raped them, you know, like
it was all consensual.
It's disgusting to masturbate in front of someone, especially if they're not completely interested to participate. But it's not a low down, atrocious, horrible, violent, disgusting act like what John Kay is accused of. And apparently that's hidden all the way at the bottom of the article. See, I didn't even make it. It's the same. I'm one of those people that didn't get to
I'm assuming most people, especially if you're a hardcore fan, it's like you don't want to like really sit there and like get into the details of it. But so yeah, I've seen some comments because I got comments on my videos and stuff where almost everything has been like positive, but there have been a couple like trolls and stuff. Just like there's this one guy, he called me, he's like, "You're a faggot, cut your balls off right now." Like
really?
Yeah,
that was
like,
a comment like
he didn't do nothing wrong, you're such a faggot, like just cut your balls off right now. You're a pussy, you know. Because I busted up my DVD and stuff, and it was kind of, I don't know, I was like on the verge of tears, honestly, when I heard that news.
Well, I mean, you're my brother, so I understand if you start destroying things physically.
That's my favorite thing. Ren and Stimpy is my number one, not only my number one favorite thing in the world since 1991. You know, I've been like a hardcore fan since, and I've never like changed my mindset about that. But it's like I've devoted my life to like I want to follow in the footsteps of doing stuff just like Ren and Stimpy. You know, I want to do things in the spirit of Ren and Stimpy. So it's like that's just, if you take that out of Adam lore, it's like what there's all this other stuff left, but it's like that's just like if there's one biggest chunk of my kind of, I guess, like popular culture influence, that's the biggest piece of the puzzle. Right there.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't even think of what it would be the same as if I found out, I guess, the same thing about Alice in Chains or something, you know, like if I had to underpin it with, you know, Alice in Chains or Pantera, as far as me being a rock and roll guy who's always like, all right, I'm going to do this. That'd be so strange.
So we have 2 viewers. Do you know who's viewing?
No, I don't. We'd have to go over here and look at the this is the hangout side, so that this might just be us and Jim, and then over here on YouTube proper we might have some action going on here. Let's see what happens if we click this. But yeah, I appreciate you coming and talking about it. I don't want to stay stuck on just this subject. I figured it's just worth it. To me, you're an authority. You know, you're an authority that I know in the realm of comic art, and that's a pretty big monolith. That's a pretty big idol to fall and smash onto the ground. John K. is not like some little 2-bit player on the side. That's huge, you know.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's only 2 watching here too, but that's okay. I mean, this will go up later and it'll be up here. So.
Yeah, so the way that's affecting my comics and stuff is kind of interesting. I think some of my stuff is already supposed to be just like G-rated and wholesome, so it hasn't been an impact. Like Birdmouth, I don't think will be hardly impacted at all.
Right.
But stuff like Toad Road, it's like I'm really like rethinking just kind of, and I think that for so long I've just thought of Toad Road as kind of like vaguely defined who the audience necessarily would be. You know, it's not necessarily for kids, it's not necessarily for adults. It's just kind of, some parts are inappropriate, maybe put a warning, but for the most part it's just like a catch-all, you know.
Right. I've always seen it, and I'll say this, I don't know, I've never thought to say this till now, but I've always seen it kind of like Married with Children, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like Married with Children it's really more adult content, but it's kind of masked in such a way that if it's inappropriate, the kids probably won't catch it.
Yeah,
so it doesn't matter. You know, I've always kind of looked at the humor. I mean, sometimes your Toad Road might be blatantly inappropriate.
See, that's the problem. That's the issue. So that's like the one thing I'm really struggling with now. It's like, man, I just want to really clearly define like who my audience is for now, from here on out. Like I just want, like I think actually the more I think, like new Toad Roads, I think will probably be better because of this. Because I'll just be like, okay, this is on HBO, you know, this isn't Nickelodeon, so I'm just gonna go all out, and it's like I'm gonna put an R on there, and it's for adults, and I'm not gonna like I either have to like kind of sanitize it or go all out, one or the other. Right. I don't like I'm not comfortable with the middle ground really. It just seems like
it doesn't work anyway in the long run, you know. And that's just my opinion, obviously. But the idea to try and make something that you compromise either way, you know. If you're going to sanitize it all the way so that it's like G-rated and it's good enough for little tiny kids, then there's not really any place for including something that's adult.
Like a dinosaur dick joke or something.
Yeah, exactly. There's just, you know.
That's the problem with my music too. It's like, if you listen to one of my albums, it's like 99% of it's like rated G. It's like, that could be on the fucking preschool Disney Channel, but then it's like, I'm a fucking cocksucking son of a bitch, and it's like a dinosaur raping a robot, and then like the rest is just like G. It's like, I don't know. No, it feels so weird and wrong now to have stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not though. You know.
Well, I just feel like it's, I don't know. I want to just be much more conscious of who I'm. You know, if I'm
make a decision
performing in front of an audience and there's kids, I don't know.
Oh, exactly. I mean, you know, I didn't put a disclaimer on this when I put it up, but the bottom line to me is it's obvious, based on just mine and yours content, that in general, we're for adult audiences and not, you know, we're not like the Wiggles channel where we're trying to be prepped and ready for young folks. You know, if me and you are going to have a conversation, that's likely there's going to be some swear words, inappropriate and adult content might be addressed. And with this one, it's pretty obvious from the beginning that, you know, if you're talking about someone being caught in horrible, inappropriate behavior, then it's almost impossible to talk about it without using the language that describes it. So you think it'll just polarize when you pick up your pen to come up with a new idea, that you think you're going to like make a choice beforehand now, like, okay, I have an idea. Is it to the hilt, like whatever I want, or am I going to make it clean and soft and acceptable for all?
Yeah, pretty much. Like the way I'm kind of thinking of projects, because like right now I'm really taking, it's such a weird timing because it's like I really am like submitting to publishers and like thinking, okay, this publisher publishes this type of thing. like for Toad Road, it's like, do I send that to what publisher would I send that to? Like an adult publisher or like something lower than that? I don't know. So I think now, yeah, it's just like I really want to be. I think I'm more comfortable with splitting my audience in half. Like I have a mature audience who can handle adult content,
Right.
and then I have like a very clean, wholesome, family-friendly side of it,
Yeah.
where it's like you can be guaranteed that I'm not going to slip in like weird, inappropriate stuff in this content, but it will be in this content.
Right.
You know?
And in a way, I see that as that really the wholesome content still plays on the other side. You know, it's like the adult side, really all the content is acceptable. So really you're only, in my opinion, it sounds like sometimes you're choosing to make something that's only wholesome, family oriented, totally acceptable for kids. Whereas if you wanted to have a couple frames or part of the story and your other side includes some of that, it probably still works. And then if there's a dinosaur dick joke, it doesn't matter, you know, or maybe it even sets it up. But that's
well, a big part of that too is like submitting comic strips to a newspaper syndicate. You have to do, it has to be like more G-rated than the Disney movies, basically.
No, it has to be absolutely wholesome.
So like I've been in that mindset for the past couple years anyways, where it's like, I can't really do this type of joke because this is like G, it's even like lower than G, whatever that would be.
I
guess.
I don't have any memory of there ever being anything controversial in any newspaper comic I've ever read. I mean, what the most adult thing would be like Doonesbury, and he had to sterilize it all so hard to just make it what it is that it's almost incomprehensible to me.
Yeah.
Like most of his strips were like, why did I even read that? And on to the next thing, because I don't.
But I actually really like that type of stuff. Like Calvin and Hobbes, I think, is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing really inappropriate in Calvin and Hobbes, and everyone still loves it.
Yeah,
and they're not like, it's not. It doesn't seem watered down or sanitized.
No, I
so
think
there's a way to do it that's not just like selling your soul, you know.
No, I agree. And Bill Watterson still addressed all the same issues, in my opinion. That's something that seemed more adult or even crass. He still managed to touch on that stuff. You know?
Yeah.
It's not like he left out. You know, he still made Calvin into someone who was struggling with rebellion and inappropriate behavior and all those kind of things. So.
Should we do flat Earth stuff? I want to learn about your theory. Like I don't know. I was watching the flat Earth debate that you did.
Well, we can the model in the group that we're working on was all started by a guy who started comparing the text of especially the 72nd chapter of the Book of Enoch, but actually eventually the whole book. But there's some really concise and elaborate descriptions in the Book of Enoch of God taking Enoch up to a position where he can view the mechanics of.
I actually remember that. Yeah.
Of the universe.
So the Book of Enoch is mentioned in the Bible.
Yes.
But it's not.
It's not in the Bible.
Really around, like it wasn't.
It was in the Ethiopian. Okay, so the Ethiopian Bible, I think, allegedly had 81 books. And supposedly there's still evidence or copies of that as like that was the most complete Bible in Ethiopia. And that's so there's quite a few different places that I've seen people make the argument, and I agree with this argument, just so people know that as far as being part of the canon of the Bible, or at least being extra-canonical with a real foundation of respect, that Enoch definitely should be in there because it's mentioned. Like, I don't remember if I think it's Paul or Peter, but they, as part of their preaching sermon somewhere in the Gospels or whatever, they say, well, Enoch did this, or they reference it as something that, it's not heretical or outside.
So it's like heretical, but it's sort of halfway between Orthodox and heresy, because it's like it's mentioned in the Bible, but it's not included in the Bible.
Right. And the case that people make is that if it's mentioned in the Bible, then you can't simply call it heretical, because the actual characters of the New Testament are not referencing it in doubt or in question, but using it as a foundational document that they're referencing. So, but beyond that,
so how do we know that version of Enoch is what they're talking about? Like that could just be someone called it that.
Well, yeah, that's something that.
But that like goes. Do you know how far like the discovery of that goes back?
Yeah, well, that some people think that Enoch is like the oldest, like even older than the Book of Job. Now, and I could be wrong about that because I don't have all this like in front of me like reference material. But as far as I know, we're just trusting the scholars that they say, hey, that's Enoch, and they've got the provenance of the Book of Enoch.
So, but wouldn't you say that one of the biggest like motivating factors for what you believe about flat Earth is that you walk outside and that's kind of what you experience, right? Like it doesn't feel like you're rotating. It doesn't feel like we're flying through space.
Absolutely.
It doesn't look like we're like going around the sun. It looks like the sun is a little thing in the sky that's moving.
Right.
Like that's what it's as a human experiencing this, that's what it seems like.
Right. We navigate and exist in the world as if it were an extended flat plane. And I'm surprised when I say that and people act shocked. Like to me, this is like sure, we all at one point in time believed, I mean, I'm not one of them anymore. I don't believe we're on a sphere, but most people in the world believe that, but still act as if, if you drive down I-5 from Seattle to Northern California, it's almost a dead shot straight line. There's some mountains, but it's not like
is Jim a flat earther?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I
don't know if I'm sold on the extra 4 moons and 2 suns yet. But still, I know. I really know.
Adam's having trouble hearing you. So what he said is, yeah, definitely flat, but he's not 100% sold on 2 suns and 4 moons yet.
Yeah, that's more interesting than the flat Earth. You're a 4-mooner?
Yeah.
A 4-mooner.
But it's not a moon. It's a reflection of a real moon, and it's like a weird feedback loop or something.
Okay, right? So if I was going to try and do like
why isn't that to me seems like the more interesting thing than it's like flat. The surface is flat.
Well, that's why I started back with the descriptions of what's found in the Book of Enoch. Okay, so this guy, his name's Sam. Sam started to really do a meditative study on the text of Enoch because it gives such elaborate descriptions of the workings of the heaven, and he noticed the moon jumping on the horizon line from one night to the next, sometimes up to almost even 30 degrees. Like, okay, so if you imagine east and west, that there's 6 gates, and really it's more complicated than that. But you could say 6 gates in the east, 6 gates in the west, and that the sun and the moon both travel in these as if they were tracks or doors. They're like portals. If the Earth is
okay, if you had to build right now like a miniature model of the Earth, it would be basically like a board, right?
Yes, it would look a lot like a chessboard. Yeah.
Okay, and then what's on the outside? You don't know.
Well, the what's on the outside I would say it's probably like, how the
turtles all the way down?
Ice sheets, right?
Jim says it's turtles all the way down.
No, what's on the sides though? Is there turtles on the sides?
The turtles on the sides too. Now we've got a new song to work on. Is there turtles on the sides?
Like you basically believe that the what most people think are galaxies and stars are not giant galaxies, right? Like they're just little tiny blips of.
Oh, I think
they're like little clouds and stuff. Or you don't even believe that? You think they're like a reflection of it's like an interference thing.
Well, I think they're probably sonoluminescence. That it's
so like light bubbles, like a weird. Right. They're like an effect.
So literally, like it says in the Bible and in the Book of Enoch and in other places too, that above, like what it says in the beginning of Genesis is true, that this realm was created by separating water from water. Now, I'm not saying that I think that when they say water, they just mean water. Just like they say that in the Book of Enoch, another big step that was made in the process of trying to decode this and understand how things might work is the idea that Enoch describes the winds in all of the directions around the Earth.
That's not just Enoch, though, right? That's like
there's
and
more,
Babylonian stuff.
Yeah, there's
and
lots
that's
of
in Genesis and stuff.
Yes, but we lean towards the idea that that's talking about magnetic, like electromagnetic
currents or something.
Currents, like when you look up, there's a few posts and gifts in our group of you say if you're laying on your back and you're looking up and there's the lowest layer of clouds, which is like close to you, it's almost like fog. And then above that, moving in a different direction, is yet another layer of clouds that's maybe higher up. Maybe it's where the jet stream is. And then way up in the sky, far beyond that, yet sometimes there's a third layer of clouds moving yet another direction. So to me, that's what we would call the electromagnetic winds or something. There's the ether, there's layers of ether, there's something going on there that isn't just wind as we see it, in my opinion.
Like atomism, it's not just particles moving in a void. It's like there's
an ether. Yeah, I really reject the idea of particle physics, and I can't. I found in the debate with JF that bringing that up just made me look like a complete asshat because I don't have the language. I haven't done the articulate language step yet to be able to say what I mean. Whereas I have a vision in my mind, and I've studied and read a lot of stuff so that I understand what I think. But I don't have any way to articulate.
The French guy, though, kind of backed you up on that. He's like, well, everything you just said is not necessarily in contradiction because the, mainstream science is kind of moving towards more just like
No, I understood
like a quantum field theory and stuff like that, where it's not really atoms. It's more like calling them atoms is like a simplification of the quantum field itself.
Right. And that's what, I was happy that he did that because really, if I wanted to push hard at that point, I could have tried to taken JF farther, but I don't have the language to do it yet. What I would have done in that position if I felt completely prepared is to say, okay, so then now we need to attack the what I consider to be the false concept of a wave-particle duality and get the particle out of here then. If you're always using the description of things as being, if it's acceptable to always describe it as a wave, because it's really steps.
I think that's something that I agree. Like, I'm not a flat earther guy, obviously. Like, I believe that the Earth is a ball in space and stuff. But I actually kind of agree with a lot of the things that you say. That like, I don't think that like what people call outer space is just like an empty void. And I don't think that atomism is accurate. I think atomism is one of the biggest like problems with why we can't figure anything out, like in science, because they've believed in atomism since the ancient Greeks, and it's like they've been going along with this idea for so long. Like there's so many things that it's like I agree with parts of what you say, but for like such different reasons.
No, yeah.
But then it's like I see people arguing against that piece of it, and it's like this guy's a fucking retard. Like what he doesn't know what Michelson-Morley is, but it's like everything's just taken on like authority, Oh, wave-particle duality. I heard Stephen Hawking say that, so it's just like that's what I believe.
Yeah,
and he didn't really go through the detailed like figuring out of how it actually all works. Which is to me, it seems like even if I don't agree with the flat Earth thing that you have, it's like you're actually going and taking the observations, you're taking empirical things, and you're actually trying to understand piece by piece what's literally actually happening, not just like, oh, well, Neil deGrasse Tyson said it's a Big Bang, so it has to be.
That's why in that process of debating that I decided I did all this prep work and I had a shit ton of stuff ready. And then as I got closer and closer to the date, I decided I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go on here and have fun and have a good conversation, because in my heart I knew that they wouldn't take a closer look, because most people just don't. I assume that you've taken a somewhat of a closer look just because I've been talking to you about it for 3 years, and maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but you're also a person I know to approach things that way.
Look at
flat Earth and all of the evidence and stuff of of what might or might not be out there. Like the idea that the Earth moves to me is just a redundant silliness now, because I don't see any evidence of it. And then I already felt that way when I first came onto the idea, and then you go find Michelson-Morley, Michelson-Gale, Airy's failure, all these other things that, as far as I can tell, completely substantiate it. And then Einstein even says, well, that's true. It doesn't matter which way you look at it. Either we're moving or the sky's moving. you can make a model to fit either. Well,
yeah, I don't think people realize that Einstein's theory is basically flat Earth with curved space. Like it's almost the same thing. It's like it's very similar to what you're saying, where it's like there is no motion and movement stuff, and he just kind of replaces things around, but he kind of explains the rest of it by just curving space-time itself and all this stuff, which I think is way more ridiculous than thinking that the Earth is actually flat, since we observe it up close as being flat to begin with. You know, up close the Earth is flat, so it makes sense that so many people would take that as the primary reference. To me, that doesn't seem like that crazy of a thing to think.
That's what
I mean, except for the fact that most people accept that NASA went and took photos of the Earth and they believe that that's what is real. So I think within the concept of, if you're questioning, if you ask someone without referencing photos of a curved Earth, like say if we were in North Korea and we didn't know if those were real or not,
right?
Now convince me that it's curved. I don't think most people would have reasons beyond that why they think the Earth is curved.
No, that's just it. That combined with the fact that, I don't want to say all, but a huge majority of any of the art and photography or whatever, they don't even call it. NASA doesn't even call it photography. They call it images, you know, and they acknowledge that most of it's composite.
Yeah.
It's not consistent. Okay, so if they would have done a better job, if they are faking it, which I believe they are, if they would have done a better job, then when I went to search, it would have looked more consistent and I probably wouldn't have had doubt. But instead you go up, pull up pictures of the Earth and the damn continents are different sizes and the color scales are different and on and on. And then say
that bugs me too. Like, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory and stuff, but it really bugs me how if you are reading a scientific journal or something, or even just like a popular science magazine, virtually all the images are false color. They're doctored images. There's hardly any real, just raw data where it says this is the real image and this is what the photos that were taken. It's almost always like touched up or edited or layered, like you're saying, like layers upon layers, like those electron microscope photos.
Yeah.
Like I always thought those were so cool growing up, and then I found out, that's not really what it looks like. They go in and they take this thing and then they go and paint over the top of it.
Yeah.
It's not really taking a picture. It's a painting.
Yeah.
Like it's like part of it's the real image, like maybe the black and the white. But then they go and they just add all these effects and stuff.
Yeah, they have to stack and stack and contrast and sharpen it. Yeah. And just the premise of the electron microscope, to me, like they have to coat everything in 24 karat gold just to get the image in the first place. So to me, that's back to the idea that it's not really bumping particles. So they electrify whatever it is that they want to take an image of. And so to me, all they're doing is taking a snapshot of that minuscule portion of the wave. You know, that everything is a wave held in place by the polarity of waves, you know, by the what do you call it when something's out of, by the phase. I feel like Kurt Vonnegut's description of Tralfamadorians in a way is more accurate, even though it doesn't, you know, I know that you don't like that as an analogy for the fourth dimension, but as far as an analogy for how we move through 3 dimensions, that really it's like this caterpillar of everything.
Oh, I do. I think that's the perfect analogy.
And then
that's that's what it is. I do think that time and space are the same. Like time dimensions and space dimensions are exactly the same thing. They're just doing something slightly different.
Right.
Like time, like I believe that space dimensions move basically and time moves forward, right?
Right.
So basically it's just the motion of time is the thing that's different about it. Like time only moves in one direction.
Right, time's fixed in one direction.
Where stuff can move through space in any direction. But other than that, it's exactly the same.
Right. To me, that's a really short, easy way for people to understand. I'm not saying that that's super simple, but it's more simplified than most. That if time is a ray moving in one direction, and then following along with it, whether it wants to or not, is all of space that we exist in, And so then space is, so there's the bubble that had to expand for everything to exist, is that space is attached to time. And now time is moving forward, and all of the waves that are coming off of time because it's moving are allowing space a place to work or exist. I mean, that to me, that makes way more sense than there's lots of little specks of dust that, you know, like with atomism, that's what I think of. I can't get that thought out of my mind that it's because Ken Wheeler said it. It's a cult of bumping particles, you know.
Oh, is that where you?
Yeah, no, that's Ken Wheeler said that, and I was like, that's so true that it's like, you know, he made the joke that, like, you know, what? So if you do a lot of photography outside in the bright sunlight, eventually you have to like take your lens off and dump out the extra photons.
You know, Draft Science responded to that. Yes, at first when Ken said that, I was like, he has a fucking good point. But then Draft Science made a really good point.
Yeah, I haven't watched too much. I know who Draft Science is, but I haven't watched too much of him.
Your camera heats up. If you take a bunch of photos, it does warm up because the photons are there and it heats your camera. So they don't fall out, but they warm up your device.
Yeah, true.
So it really is a.
I mean, I would say that's it's likely just as easy to argue that that's still.
That doesn't mean it's particles.
No, but that's waves, right?
Yeah. But I mean, that isn't like, wait a minute. Yeah, if you're capturing this light, where does it go? Oh, well, it's converted to heat.
I was kind of surprised that you know, JF actually agreed with me on a lot of points, and I think I surprised him the farther we got into it that I was actually intelligent.
Which one's JF?
He's the Frenchman, you know. He seemed
the French scientist, right?
Yeah. He seemed more and more at ease to have an intellectual conversation with me as we moved on, because I think he pretty much put his kid gloves on before the whole thing, figuring that I was going to be like a drooling retard or something. Right. You know?
He seemed very prepared, though. It seemed like
he was.
He had like a script.
He's like the resident debater on that.
Like
channel.
He wasn't really using much like what I would call thinking. He was just, I emailed Neil deGrasse Tyson for a list of responses to flat Earth people. You know, like he kind of planned out. Oh, you brought up this point. Now I know an answer.
No,
to that.
Yeah,
it's apologetics. You know.
Yeah, exactly. He was using, and I knew he would do that because that's what JF is the resident debater on that. You know, he's the co-host with Worski, but he loves to debate. He's experienced in debate. You know, his debate with Jay Dyer is well worth listening to, because that's, in my opinion, that's where you can see a little bit of the flaw in the logic in JF. But prior to that, I mean, I did a lot of work to prepare and assumed that I would probably still lose because I'm not an experienced debater in a technical format like that. I've never, you know, me and you might stay up all night standing by the stove arguing over a point, which one of us is right, but it's not the same as a college level debate team or anything like that, you know, and I know that he's that way. But so as soon as he started to try and get me to agree on a definition of gravity or everything, I already knew that it's like, I'm just going to go with it and down this path. I'm not going to try and resist, because
that was extremely fallacious. Everything he did, he was equivocating. Like you agreed to a term, but you said, but when I say it, I mean this by it. So you can call it that, but when I say it, I mean this, and he would just, now he turned that into what he wanted it to be. Oh, well, you agreed to this, now you agreed to this, and I can just turn the words into whatever I want. And
that's the reason I gave up on the idea of having it, you know. You know, if JF ends up watching this or somebody points it out to him, if you want to do it again, I'll be glad to prepare myself even more effectively, and we can have an actual cutthroat blood sport debate. But I was pretty happy with what we already did, so I'm not worried about it. But as far as to get back, to bring this full circle, because I feel like we're just about done. But okay, so with the moon jumping gates and the sun jumping gates in the descriptions from Enoch, it's something you can observe. If you can get a position like at your place where you live, you should be able to see the moon every time it breaches the horizon, and at least with your eye, observe where it's coming up in reference to something, right? Mm-hmm. And so after that, Jim, you're not stirring a cup full of something, are you?
I'm trying to hypnotize you here.
It's working.
Hold on.
Your blue light is awesome, Jim.
Okay, so the Earth is like a board.
Right.
You don't know what's below it.
Well, it's theorized what's below it. Okay, so obviously there's lots of earth and dirt below it. and then below that would be
that is the Earth, though, right?
right, like Earth, like a whole. There would probably be more than 8 miles worth because the Russians allegedly drilled that far and didn't. All it got was hotter. So then below that would be water, and then below that would be like ice again. So, and I think,
but like if you had a miniature version of it, how thick would that be? Like it would be a board, and then there'd be a little tiny bit that's water here and ice, or it would be like here's the board, and then it goes all the way like this.
Yeah, it would be essentially like it'd be shaped like a diamond or like a pyramid. Like if you took 2 pyramids and set them on top of each other,
one upside down.
One
like an octahedron.
Yes, an octahedron. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So like an octahedron with the flat plane in the middle being the Earth where we exist. On top of it being.
So the base of the pyramid is the surface of what we would call the Earth.
Yes.
And then the sky goes up to one pyramid, and then the ground goes down to another pyramid.
Yes, and they would both truncated pyramids, so that it's just like the picture, like the picture of the eye of the pyramid on the dollar bill.
Mm.
Really, there's a very good comparison between that and what it looks like we're living under. So all the typical flat Earth models are saying, oh, it's a dome over our heads like a snow globe. Like Mark Sargent, I assume you don't know, but Mark Sargent, for anyone listening to this that's a flat earther, Mark Sargent's always making the comparison to the Truman Show and a dome. And this is the most common model you see is like a dome, it looks...
So, but what you're describing is almost like a dome. It's just more like a tent.
More like a tent, because that's what the description in all of the scriptures say, that he stretches out the sky like a tent.
Well, other than that, it's like if you had a snow globe that was like pointy.
Yeah, but it's not pointy because it would be truncated. It's a truncated pyramid. So like the eye on top of the pyramid. The eye on top of the pyramid would be...
The top is chopped up and the bottom is chopped up?
Yeah.
Okay, so then what's beyond that?
So that would be levitating inside of a almost like a Tesla coil or a motor. That's floating inside of molten metal or some kind of apparatus that allows it to hover there, because it's hovering there. It's floating there like those what do you call it? Like the deep freeze magnet levitation.
Wait.
And so
I don't understand what you're saying. So outside, so that would be like the equivalent of what people would typically think is outer space. You think there's like molten...
That there's some kind of metal that's allowing all
like
of
liquid metal or something?
Something that's allowing all the electromagnetic effect and especially the light that we see to come from. So that would be essentially the way I would describe that. And this may not be accurate to what everyone else that's studying this along with me thinks. This is just how I understand it, because it's not complete. It's not like we have this sketched out. There's not some book on page 65 that tells you. We're all brainstorming with one guy who started the process, and we're all kind of following along with him and giving input, so that as a group we're slowly building this model based mostly on, almost completely on repeatable, observable evidence. But then once you get enough repeatable, observable evidence, you start to speculate what might be. We can't repeat, observe, or have any evidence of what's outside of this realm. People think that we do as far as the globe model, because they see all of this, what I call art and imagery of outer space.
So that's not that different from the normal model, but you basically are saying, well, it's different.
Well, we're
but
stationary.
It's like it's
everything's
instead of like quote unquote floating in space, like empty space, you basically believe that it's sort of floating in something like liquid metal.
Well, I don't know.
Not floating, but like
it's levitating kind of inside the
like the magnetism is holding it in place.
Yes, I'd say us existing here is evidence of that inertial plane having been. So when I say there's a perturbance in the inertial plane, that's what the field inside of that ball of whatever it is, molten. To me, to call it.
Wait, that's a ball?
Yeah, that would be shaped like this,
Wait, so it's a sphere. So you believe that it's a ball?
Well,
But that's not the Earth.
No, that the Earth is just the flat plane.
So the Earth is flat, and the is that like a firmament basically?
Well, the the tent on top of the earth would be the firmament. So outside of the firmament, now you have the real mechanics of the universe somehow working, so that the sun and the moon, the suns and the moons, exist outside of
The sphere?
the tent, outside of the tent, but
Outside of the octahedron.
yes, but inside of the sphere, and somehow there.
Oh, so that's like the heavens is like a sphere
Right,
around like a diamond shape.
right. There we go. Yeah,
And then what's outside of that?
so that's
No,
God.
No. It's like that's just like
the
serious
oneness of the true, eternal,
Ah.
unnameable God is what would be outside of that.
So there's a sphere. So why is that part as a ball?
Well, that's just a speculation on our part. You know, I don't even know if that references. I'd have to go back and check where that references out to anything in the Book of Enoch or any other scripture. But the idea being that the top of the truncated pyramid is a lens shape that has a fluid inside of it, like chiral fluid. Like it's almost like an LCD screen. Like have you seen how they take these?
Can you like build a physical model of that? Like pretty, like just.
We could.
Like
I've considered
or
it.
something?
I've considered it. I haven't done it yet, but I've seriously considered it just so that people will shut up about saying that.
Just at least to show them, no, it's not. It's not like Final Fantasy with a floating chunk of land. It's like this
No,
weird
that's
like,
what
tesseract thing.
Did you watch that that Convex Earth documentary?
I don't think
Like
so.
to me, that's a typical disinformation con job. Okay, so these guys, it's all Brazilians, and I was joking with Jim. It might have even been today that I felt like it was typical south of the equator fashion of people jumping on whatever the West is doing and like trying to at least get in on it so that they're not being left behind. You're like, what? Everyone in the West is going flat Earth, and so all these Brazilian scientists got together and they ran all these tests. Some of them that are very good, like they built a huge array of bright green lasers and shot them all the way across either a section of the ocean or across a lake and flew over at night and videotaped that it's parallel to the surface of the lake over a long enough expanse that it should be demonstrating curvature when it's not. They did the same thing with radio waves. You know, they took two radio receivers and they transmitted and received across the straight, flat area that, you know, allegedly there should be curvature that things are preventing or stopping it. You know, like if you do the math and you're big enough, far enough away.
Wait, do you think that the land? What do you call it? That's just the Earth.
Yeah.
Like what's the board part?
Yeah, just Earth.
Do you believe that there's any warping at all? Like it's maybe slightly warped?
No, I don't. I think it's flat.
It's like perfect beyond elevation changes.
Yeah. I mean, obviously,
So there's no warpage because like what? So how do you deal with the ship thing? The ship on the horizon.
Well, if you really, I mean, you could do this yourself. If you really start to study the ship on the horizon phenomenon, it's just angular resolution, perspective, and then on top of that, you've got refraction of light, refraction and reflection of light. Explain some of it, but your eye is limited.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. Like, I don't know. I can understand how you could get convinced of a model like that because when you learn, like if you're drawing, you learn perspective. They teach you all this flat shit. But then as you keep learning, it's like, then they're like, well, technically, really, it's not flat. Everything is curved. Like in perspective, they teach you like a simplified version where it's like you just have these straight lines and a vanishing point and all this stuff. But really, everything's curved. We don't see we don't see things as flat, straight, parallel lines. Everything is warped. Our eyeball warps everything. Right. So we see curvature just by looking out into the world.
Oh yeah, because our eyes are all the equivalent of a 50 millimeter lens.
And then a lens does that too.
Eyes are round, you know.
So it's like if you were convinced that there's a lensing effect, how do you distinguish which? How do you if you have a curved lens, if you have a fisheye lens and you're looking at something flat, or you have something curved and you have a straight lens and you're not sure which one's which.
Right.
How are you supposed to figure out which one's which? And it seems like metaphysically, when it comes down to like philosophical axioms or something, if we get down to a point where it's like there's no real way to ever really distinguish. Like you would have to just basically trust one or the other.
I agree.
You'd never be able to tell which one's which.
I agree. I mean, that's to me, this whole and I was glad to be able to say that to Andy and JF too. That like it always ends up in a philosophical realm of it's not a simple either or answer. We can't trust our eyes.
Yeah.
And it's all we have though. We have our five senses. Some people maybe say six because you have an intuition, or some people have something more. But for the most part, we definitely all agree that we have five senses. And that's as good as you get as far as determining where you are and what's happening,
Yeah, to me it seems like...
So if the realm itself exists as something other than what our senses tell us, then it doesn't matter.
Right. I think that's the thing. Like, I'm not trying to debate you, but if I was like, all right, I got to convince Sean he's crazy, he's wrong, I wouldn't be like, well, there's satellites, like there's proof. Like, how do you, well, the galaxy is this many light years away. It's like, that's retarded. That's, you're thinking in your own worldview, and you just think that that's not convincing at all to you. You would have to actually think in terms of, okay, you have a whole, like almost like polar opposite metaphysics, where it's like, you're just, instead of looking from the outside in, you're looking from the inside out.
Right.
And you can't just say, oh, well, they measured this distance, because that distance is taken for granted within this other system of all these other these axioms and things. So it's like you have to, if you're going to try to convince somebody, you have to first understand what they're even saying, which I still don't fully understand the model. Like if I were to try to draw it out or something.
Yeah.
Like I would want to at least first understand what you're saying, and then understand your axioms that you're working from. And it's like, if you don't deal with the fact that you already think that the government is controlling stuff, like there's no way to, like, why debate, like...
Oh yeah, and I think it's way bigger than the concept of government. I think, like, have you read the Silmarillion?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, in the Silmarillion, it parallels the work that we've done and some of the things that we've discovered so much that it disturbed me to the point of actually zapping, like, the...
This is Tolkien, right?
Yeah, and it's Tolkien's pre-history of everything. It's Tolkien.
So it's almost like the Genesis of Lord of the Rings.
It's literally the Genesis of his entire...
Like the book of Genesis for the Lord of the Rings.
Yes, yeah. Because it's like the one eternal God springing forth first a being that's his counterpart that becomes his adversary, and then springing forth seven more, that those become the spirits that inhabit and eventually start to create a material world. It's like Gnosticism.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like...
It's like a Catholic Gnosticism. I say Catholic just because I know Tolkien's Catholic. But...
that sounds like some of the Gnostic Gospels and stuff.
It is. It is. I mean, it's just like Sophia, people that know Gnosticism get the joke that, like we're living in Sophia's miscarriage, is the... Sophia, like, saw that there was potential to create, and she was supposed to do it with her godly counterpart as a counterbalance, and instead she got curious and did it by herself, and that created the material world. And Yaldabaoth, the blind crazy god that runs it, so it was like people even be crass and make the joke that we're living in Sophia's abortion, but it's not. It's more miscarriage, in my opinion, is a more accurate description of that. But I was doing somewhere and I lost it. I forgot.
If you already have those, like, if you're already a Christian Gnostic conspiracy theorist, you know what I mean? Like, I think that a flat Earth is not that far out of the question. If those things are correct, then even if you're just a conspiracy theorist and you're like, I don't trust NASA,
right? Then
boom, already it's like the concept of the possibility of a flat Earth seems 50-50 at least.
Right. To me, so far, you're the only person to articulate it in a language why you could completely understand where I'm coming from. But of course, that makes sense because you're my brother. You've been putting up with this as long as you can remember. Like Sean's, I'm a one-off to I'm way higher in openness than most people, and I think you are too. That's why you're able to have a level-headed conversation about it. I found out just recently on Facebook that some of my friends are obviously very high in openness and tolerant because they're like, what the hell are you talking about, Sean? And some people are like pissed off.
Yeah, people get pissed off.
And then other people like who have a greater authority than most are like, Well, yeah, I think that's stupid and you're wrong. But
Yeah.
you know, here's my personal experience. You know, so to me, it reveals a lot about people. But for the most part, people aren't shocked to find out that I believe or think something that's super far out.
To me, it doesn't
I've
seem-
always been that way, or have been
Yeah.
for a very long time anyway. You know?
To me, it doesn't seem that different from like some people really strongly believe in a God that started the universe, and some people are just total atheists.
Yep. I feel the
And
same
it's
way.
like-
yeah. It's a
If you're one or the other, it's like, how could that person believe that? But it's just like a whole different set of like ways to interpret the data that really are the parts that are hard or impossible to ever really check and figure out. So it really is, it's like beyond science. It's like a metaphysical, it's
Well,
like a philosophical position.
I'll tell you the truth, Adam, and I tried to make this a point on that show, and I don't know if they caught it or not, but I don't think that suddenly mankind woke up and realized that the Earth was flat. I think some powers.
You mean today?
No, I mean, yeah,
Like
exactly.
recently,
In the
not
last
like
few
in
years,
ancient
you know, so 2015, you could say it started to really blow up. You know, if you go look at Google Trends for flat Earth, right around 2015, it goes boop and takes off. Okay, to me, that's a huge clue that something's happening. That, you know, to make that little line move, you need influence, you need money. I mean, you can't make that line move very easily, you know, without a machine gun. You know,
Yeah.
it's not an easy thing to do to influence all of Google's search results. So I think they have, well, I believe in an overarching plan under communitarian concept of government that you know, you look up Nikki Rapana and communitarianism. If you want to do the real hard reading and research, you can see what I'm talking about, not just take my word for it. Far beyond that, okay, I think they're moving us towards where they want that to be the new system. Whereas we're working in a system that is global now, for lack of a better word. You know, people act like it's not, like they believe that governments war against each other, but I don't really believe that. We're all in a system of agreement. That's why you can have something like an Antarctic Treaty, where, you know,
I don't know.
the Antarctic Treaty, I think, is, I don't remember, 65, somewhere around there. Might have been earlier, but all the governments that are
Oh, I know.
enemies,
I know what you're talking about.
they all agree that we're going to protect Antarctica and we're going to keep it, you know, on the DL. We're all good, you know. So to me, that's strange complicity. You know, why would Russia and the United States, if they're mortal enemies, agree that this area of land is, you know, it's no man's land, it's safe, it's neutral? Like, you know, with a real adversary, I would never agree anything's neutral. If I can get it from you or make sure that you don't get it, I will, because you're my enemy, right? So I think they're bringing out the process of really changing into what I would call a communitarian future. And the missing piece of the puzzle that most people don't see is religion. Now, for decades now, you're seeing all the main religious heads start to agree to get along with one another. The Protestants and the Catholics, they call it ecumenicism, and they all are doing this, let's find points of agreement where we might be different, but we can at least agree on these points to be the same.
See, I don't know. Not that I want you to convince me, but I don't think that any of that is like necessary. It's like, I think that people do that on their own enough. Like, you already just psychologically, there already is divisiveness and us versus them, like without some kind of like effort to like we have to, like, someone controlling, like, we got to put them versus us versus them. Like, I think it's just an automatic, natural thing that's like human. I think it's human nature more than it's like.
I think it is human nature, but that they inflame it and aggravate it so that it seems more prevalent than it really would be. I think that people would still be adverse to each other, and they would definitely still defend themselves and family and their property. But I think it would be really rare if it wasn't for mass media and if it wasn't for the education that we all got to believe that, you know, like, we're Americans. You know, if you take that nationalism away from everybody and you're really still just something more like tribes or kingdoms, then I don't know. There's no way to truly speculate on it. But my point being that, okay, so if the religious part is the part that's going to complete their little plan to make their new communitarian system work, So
what is? Can you some? I can't remember what communitarianism.
Well, the main concept of communitarianism is that we focused on individual rights for too long, and so we need to balance that with the rights of the community. That's what they'll tell you.
Similar to communism?
It's very similar to communism. People often just want to say, well, it's just communism, but it's not communism. And you have to do some research and reading to really understand why it's not. Okay, it's kind of based on Hegel and the dialectical process, but I call it like a contrived problem reaction solution process. So they believe in the polarization of things to create something new, to polarize again, to create something new. And if you do that enough, then eventually you get perfection. And
this is Hegel, or this is the communitarian
philosophy? Well, Hegel believed that in a truly idealistic way. And I never really effectively read Hegel. I couldn't stand trying to even understand Hegel. I think Hegel's just an idiot. But that's just my opinion, you know. He's still important, but I think he's an idiot. But so,
I've heard of his like dialectical methods and stuff, but I've never
so I think, you know, from what I remember, Hegel meant that was happening in the world naturally, and that eventually it was going to create something like the perfect state of the world as if or in the place of God, but that it wasn't anyone designing to do it.
State of being or government?
No, state, like the state. Like the state ideally would become God.
No, but a state in the sense of government, or state isn't a state of being?
No, the state is in the sense of government. That if you go thesis, antithesis enough times and let everything play out until there's no more antithesis, that the final thesis is that the state has become all-knowing and all-powerful enough to live under it. And I think he meant it in a good way. He thought that was going to be something like a utopia. So I'd say they take that and turn it into, we can use this like a tool. We can create problem reaction solution over and over again ourselves, so that it's not organic. It's not organic. It's not a natural process. They're doing it. You know, I see that with the gun, all the gun stuff that keeps going on. You know, now this lady runs into YouTube and shoots the place up. This kid is down here in a shooting that either did or didn't happen in Florida, and on and on and on. You know, that that's what people say, right? Nobody believes anything anymore. But
so that's the communitarian thing, which I can't remember that. How does that affect the flat Earth stuff?
Well, I would say the reason that they bring the flat Earth out, and
it's the us versus them thing because of
is it divides people on a psycho-spiritual level. So now what you said comes full circle.
So that's the Hegel thing. Like the thesis is the Earth is a ball. The antithesis, the Earth is flat. And they're saying the Hegelian method would be those fight back and forth, or how does it work?
Yeah, those. So that fights back and forth until one or the other.
So it's something. So the Earth is neither flat nor a sphere. It has to be something in between.
Well, I think that they use the flat Earth as a tool.
Like, would that be what would be the synthesis?
The synthesis would be something in between.
Like it's neither a sphere
and some people say that. They'll tell you that they believe that it's a toroidal realm and some people believe in a concave Earth. Not very many, but some people actually believe.
Hollow because we're on the inside.
Yeah, the hollow Earth, because light does bend up with refraction. So some people say just what you were saying earlier, that you can't really trust your eyes. Everything might appear flat to you, but really you're on the inside.
That's why I studied hollow Earth, because I thought it was the craziest thing. And then the more I studied it, I was like, all the equations, if you just put a minus sign, it's hollow Earth theory.
Yep.
So it's like when I learned that at an early age, where it's like you really have to be careful about your axioms, because you could very easily fool yourself into thinking something that can't really ever be proven. You can't really prove that hollow Earth is wrong if there's no way to know. Do you put a plus sign or do you put a negative sign?
Well, yeah. Well, there's no that. It all comes down to being able to somehow be more human than human to verify. Well, it's just philosophical nonsense.
I do think
we can't be outside.
There's something
of this
about it
looking in to
about
see
this
what
not
it
being
is.
special, though. That seems to be what. Like, we're not in a special place in the universe. That to me seems to be the deciding factor in whether flat Earth seems compelling or not.
Well, that's that's the Hegelian, to me, that's the dialectical or communitarian position. It's not that it's a physical argument. The surface level or the exoteric level is that it's a physical argument between a sphere and a flat plane.
Right.
But the esoteric or internal argument is we're in the middle of nothing, unimportant, grew out of monkeys, the product of a big bang of swirling gases that eventually formed something like life and took billions upon billions of years, and then we're still here and we really don't, now we're just sophisticated monkeys that are, I guess, we're burning off our extra brain power by
basically reductionism, nihilism.
Right.
Of most atheists, well,
and so then the
majority of
opposite
atheists
is,
I know fall in that category.
Okay, so if we are in a realm that can be proven to A, not be a sphere, and B, be even more than centrally located, but actually be the only thing there is. That there's not anything, you're looking at sonoluminescence in the sky and something like a clockwork of lights above your head, but there's no infinite reach of space, that really it's just you. It's
like the world is the universe, basically.
Yes, exactly. The whole world is the cosmos.
And when it seems like, this is the reference point, like when you look out into the world, it seems like you are the only being experiencing reality. Yes. That's how we experience reality.
Right. It makes everyone.
And it's almost more like, we really are. Like this is the world. This is where the focus of the world is, like it seems, and it really literally is.
So that we either become in one model infinitely unimportant, or in the other model infinitely important. And so that to me is because I've studied enough of what not wacko conspiracy stuff, just stuff that they publish, the UN publishes, or the religions publish, or the New Age people publish, or even the scientists publish about where they prefer and or see the world going, that it's an ecumenical, all world inclusive religion worshiping nature. So if you bring out the idea that the earth is super ultra special and all unique and by itself, in the long term, when that catches on, because I'm not thinking of it in our lifetime even necessarily, like I was listening to a show this morning where they said that they'd done some statistical research, and that only 66% of people between the ages of 18 and 24 definitely believed in the globe. Now, to me, that's a pretty huge deal if that's a true test. If they really went and interviewed, say, 5,000 people, and the age range of 18 to 24 is like 40%, like, no, we don't think so. Well, that's only happened in the last few years, not 10 years even. So if in 10 years, those people and those people's children are like, no, it's definitely flat. Well, then in 50 years, you've got a real conundrum on your hands.
That's something I don't understand. Even in this conversation, it didn't come up. But I've seen other like flat earth discussions and debates and stuff. Why don't people distinguish between local curvature and global curvature? Like up close, the earth is flat. That's a fact. That is a topological mathematical fact that everyone agrees that when you're close enough, it's flat. This floor is flat.
Yeah, and from here to Tri-Cities is flat.
Yeah, up to a certain point. Yeah, everyone agrees. Well, as far as I understand, I think some people have a misconception that up close, because it's curved globally, that means everything is curved no matter how close you get to it. But that's not really what.
To me, that's the both.
But like, why isn't there a distinction between? I don't know. I think if more people distinguished between locally flat, globally curved, it would sort out these kind of compelling reasons to go all the way with one or all the way with the other. I think most people believe that the Earth is globally and locally curved. And then most flat earthers are like, well, it's locally and globally flat.
I agree.
It's like,
and that's what
a sphere, we agree on that. If you get close enough to a sphere, it gets flatter and flatter and flatter. Or if a sphere gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger,
right,
it gets flatter and flatter.
I'll never forget when I very first mentioned it to you. That was your answer. I was like, oh my gosh, Adam, I've been studying this idea that the Earth's flat. And you said, and I quote, well, I thought all huge spheres were flat. Which I mean makes sense. Maybe not everyone can catch that, but I mean I understood immediately what you meant. That like, if this is 25,000 miles in circumference,
Yeah.
then it appears where we are flat.
See, this comes up. So it's funny because even though I feel like we have almost like totally opposite beliefs about the Earth at least, this comes up so frequently when I'm discussing lore theory because I have to explain flatness and curvature. It's like the entirety of my theory of the universe. It's like you have to understand that something that's a big enough circle is flat. Like if you just see a section of it. So it's like I'm constantly like discussing this, and people like misunderstand what I'm saying and think that I'm like a flat earther.
That's
People accuse me of being a flat earther because I'm saying up close it's locally flat. You know, so it's like it comes up a lot where it's like people have a real hard concept with even just the concept that up close the world is flat. Everyone should agree to that.
To me, that's the most shocking thing that I
found. And then most people deny it.
And trying to have a conversation with people is that they're like, no. And I'm like, what do you mean no? Like you go to Arizona and drive on the freeway, or you go to Wyoming, it's flat. It's not an argue. There's no position to argue it. If the road stretches out 100 miles ahead of you and it vanishes into perspective because there's no topography preventing it or moving it, and it goes away from you flat, then we're in a conundrum for agreeing on definitions about anything at that point.
You see a horizon line, not a horizon curve.
Yeah. Here, Jim, I'm gonna give Adam these headphones for a second because I gotta go to the bathroom. So here, continue on with Jim. He said you see a horizon line, not a horizon curve.
No, well, I don't know. I got a steady perspective to confirm that.
Lore theory, I'm sure, has some.
How's it going, Jim? I can actually hear you now, I think.
It's good. How's it going over there?
It's interesting.
It is interesting.
You're kind of quiet.
Oh, maybe. How about, can you hear me now a little bit?
Well, I don't know if that's you or just the headphones, but
it's hard to say. This is kind of the first time, I guess, trying with all these.
So wait, Jim, you are a flat earther too?
Well,
what are the odds of that?
You know,
did you get converted to flat earthism?
only trying to prove Sean wrong.
Oh, and then he convinced you.
No, I just looked into it deeper and deeper, and I really kind of it pulled me over. I mean,
wow.
NASA was a big thing for me because I always loved NASA and everything space. And then when I started kind of like watching videos of, seeing like bubbles on moonwalks, and then when I started kind of researching some people that were involved in NASA, like Jack Parsons, having him and his occult backgrounds with Aleister Crowley and whatnot. And
oh wow, yeah, I don't know anything about that. So, bubbles on the moon. What the hell? What is that?
Well, there's a lot of spacewalk videos where it looks like there's like UFOs in the background, but it kind of looks like they're air bubbles that are escaping from, like corners of their spacesuit or something. Also, there's a lot of like, I don't know, just kind of some funny things. Like
anomalies? Unexplained anomalies.
Like during a spacewalk a year ago or 2 years ago or something, something went wrong, and one of the astronauts almost drowned because like there was like a gallon of water got into his spacesuit somehow, and I don't know, it's just kind of weird. I guess they
on the moon,
like from on the International Space Station.
Oh, on the space station.
They were doing like a spacewalk, and somebody their helmet filled with water. Which I don't know how that would happen. I mean, I don't know if they use water for their cooling or what, but it's probably one of the problems that could happen if you were filming a spacewalk in a swimming pool, in a giant swimming pool somewhere.
I see what you're saying. How do we know though that wasn't just a urine overflow?
It could have been, and they were just too embarrassed to say something.
Yeah. Because I mean, what would you admit? Like you pissed so much that it overflowed into your spacesuit and almost like drowned in your own piss, or
well, like,
the Earth is flat. Well, you know.
I doubt that they pee in their spacesuit like for the whole time, just right when they're on the spacewalks, right? You know, like they had emergency and they have to pee. But
Right.
like, I don't know how often I pee a whole gallon of water. So like, I don't know. If there's a gallon of water in my spacesuit.
So you used to believe that the Earth was basically a ball, just like the mainstream explanation.
Yeah, I didn't really have any reason to think otherwise. You know.
And then you saw footage of, well, Sean has all kinds of like explanations.
Sean mentioned it, and I was like, that's just kind of ridiculous, you know.
Right.
I don't know. Whatever. I'll check it out. And I started looking around on YouTube, and I was like, you know, some of this stuff that they're saying rings true, and really, like, there's not a lot of non-NASA evidence of a ball Earth. I mean, photographic evidence there really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
There's like high altitude balloons, but they don't really even get high enough to see any slope. Like supposedly, you need to be, was it 100 miles high to see any sort of curve on the horizon? Lots of people say different things.
We got 3 viewers. Does anybody have a question? Or I guess one of those viewers is you, right?
Am I a viewer if
or are we one of the viewers
video?
too down here?
I've got.
I don't know, because I went down to 0 viewers, so.
Huh.
But it looks like we have 3 viewers. If anybody has a question, we could take your questions.
Do you guys have questions up there? Question screen?
Huh?
I'll see if you're okay. Just figured that. Go over here and see if there's what's going on in here.
No
Hello,
questions,
hello.
guys.
Oh, I was trying to get this to go away.
Well, let's see. Got a little bit of dead air.
Dead air.
We covered I don't know if I really understand your model though, all the way, Sean. Do you have a piece of paper?
Yeah, I'm sure we got paper or something.
Because I wanted to sketch out what I thought you were saying, and then I want you to look at it and say yeah or no, you know. Because I think I get what you're saying as far as like if it was a geometric shape, you know. So you converted Jim. You convinced him.
Well, I just told Jim what I was looking at, and he convinced himself.
Uh-huh. That's all right to draw on the back of this?
Yeah, it's just.
4 viewers.
Is that
Right.
right there on YouTube?
That's what it says.
All right, so here's
Oh, there are. I didn't realize there's comments right here. Okay, so
You guys
Okay,
have
so-
comments down there?
I'm still a ball head. Definitely don't subscribe to Flat Earth, but really enjoying your comments. Well, thank you. So we've got some people here. Sorry for kind of green on the
so
the comments, folks.
there's 2 separate places to see comments, and we're just noticing them. So if anyone's watching, go ahead and leave a comment, and we can respond. Still a ball head.
It's funny. I love that everyone uses self-deprecating humor for which side of this debate they're on. And it's really funny, like on the Worski stream especially, it's like globe cucks blown the fuck out, which is just like, what strange nomenclature has arisen from all of this. Like, who says that? You know?
Well,
Like, I saw somebody say that I'm still a globe cuck. Like, what kind of a weird thing to say is that? Yeah. And then flurfer. Have you seen that, Adam?
No.
That's the new pejorative insult for people who believe the
Flurfer?
Earth is flat. A flurfer. Flerfer. Like, oh, you're a flurfer, huh? So I guess I'm stuck with the flurfer title.
Oh, that's just it's
like a slur of flat Earth, flurf.
Yes.
Down with the flurfers.
You know what? It looks like a tesseract.
Yeah.
What you're describing looks like
Did you draw it?
the three-dimensional shadow of a tesseract.
Adam's, yes, it does. Adam's in the process of making a sketch. For the record, folks, this is probably the only guy I know that I could describe something as strange as this to him, and without any reference, he has an idea of something he could put on paper. So this should be a fun experiment to see how this compares to other sketches and art that's being brought up.
What's on the boundaries?
On the boundaries, the local boundaries, because that's another. I mean,
It's a checkerboard. What's on the edges of the checkerboard?
Well, north and south would be north would be mountains and ice. South would be just ice. And as far as we can tell, east and west, there might be real actual edges that act kind of like a swimming pool drain. You know how when the water overflows at a large pool, how there's like just a catch, that there's like essentially the same kind of way a drain would work or the way that your toilet works, that you've got a suction lock and the water overflows into it and then it stabilizes, and obviously that's speculation, but the way that the sun vanishes into the Pacific, the combination of the way the sun sets over the Pacific and the fact that sometimes Mount Fuji or Mount Rainier cast an enormous shadow. The only way for the sun to cast a shadow using Mount Rainier would be for the sun to physically be lower than the mountain itself.
Or an extreme angle to it.
Yeah.
Right? Like a long shadow during the day when the sun is low in the sky, your shadow is like.
Yeah, but the sun still has to be at least drawing parallel to the mountain for it to be. It has to be behind it physically for it to be a shadow.
180 degrees opposite.
Yeah. Because that happened. Oh, I can't hear you, Jim.
What's
wait,
that?
I'm looking at the. It's very confusing if you look at the. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
We hold it up.
Let's see that. I
I
gotta.
can't see it.
Hold on.
Lower it down.
Just a second. I gotta switch to the proper screen here. So.
The lighting might not be.
Yeah, the lighting's not great.
That's interesting though. That
Can
really
you
is.
hit one of those lights and see if one of these bigger lights will come on?
That's like basically the cross section of a tesseract. It's the part of a hypercube. You just see like the
Put
outer.
the light in front of it. There you go. Your picture was in shadow. There you go. It's I can't see anything. Closer. Tilt your picture towards the light. There you go.
You might have to make sound for the. Does it switch cameras?
Now a little closer. Now focus. It's hard to see. Maybe
5 viewers. It seems like more people are watching.
Here's Enoch's flat Earth.
Oh, there you go.
you can kind of see it.
According to Adam Lohr. Now, mind you, folks, that Adam just drew this based on a verbal description, and this is almost identical.
So what's at the top cap there?
So what's at the top cap there is the workings of the universe. Okay, so this is where. So what you have is.
So like if this
you've got the sun, the moon, and the stars existing somehow there.
So I have the sun, moon, and stars in the sphere. Is that wrong?
Well, the stars probably in the sphere, but then the sun and the moons would be existing above this, still making a working above that truncated pyramid that creates the illusion of what we see, or creates the projection of what we see inside the realm.
Oh, so it's a lot more complicated than that. It's like a crystal lens or something.
Yes, it's like a Charl lens. Charl is a fluid that divides things into two.
So wait, okay? I actually want to just understand this. Where is the real? Okay, the moon is a projection of a real thing.
Yes.
Where is that? Where's the
it's
real
above,
thing?
It's above that.
There's like a giant sphere above that little spot.
Yes.
And that's the real moon.
Yes.
And then it's projected down like a lens. And does that move?
Yes.
Like that orbit, sort of, or
right.
like
well, it acts
like
the theory is that it acts like a pendulum.
Oh, so it almost like swings back and forth.
Right, and that's what explains why the moon jumps. Okay, so the moon and the sun are working together in tandem, like the pendulum arm on a clock. So the moon would be the part that goes back and forth, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
Okay.
So that's
we can make like a little animation of this pretty easily, I think.
Where I know that some of these. Guys
so where on this? Well, actually, where? Describe it to me. I want to see if I'm interpreting what you're saying. Where's the real sun?
Yeah, that's a harder question. Now, the real sun is also up there where the moon is, because the sun and the moon are being projected into this realm. So what we're seeing are.
But they're in the sphere of liquid metal.
Yeah, they're inside the sphere, but outside of the tent. But also,
so you know that the real moon is there, but you're not quite sure where the real sun is?
Well, it's there too. But the thing is that the real sun might actually be the illusion of, or the hologram of the sun might be a byproduct of the lensing effect, so that the moon is a thing. Now, this is just me speculating off the top of my head. This isn't in reference to anything in the group. So if anyone's watching from our group, don't think that this isn't by any means, like, this is just me throwing shit out there. But I know we've talked about what would you call supernal light, or, that the light that's coming through the lens is a limited version of the true light, which is a light that we can't actually see. Trying to think of how you would.
So you're not actually sure in the model where the sun, the physical thing that is sun, right? That the two suns you see a reflection of, which are like almost like a hologram of a real thing.
Right.
You're not really sure where the real thing is exactly in relation to where the real moon is.
No.
But it was probably somewhere around the same.
Yeah, they got to both be above the lens.
So it's above that within the
ball, yeah.
The sphere. But not out in like the weird outer realm, like the realm of.
No, not out there, because that, to me, I think that's the true end of the world, quote unquote. Is that? Do
you think of the outer realm as being bright, dark, not undescribable?
I think it as being incomprehensible, because we're talking about the. So if outside of that great sphere is what we would call the oneness of God, or the ultimate thing, that the.
Like heaven almost.
Right. It would be heaven. So, or maybe even that sphere is heaven, and outside of that is a creative force. And everything that is evidenced is just a byproduct of that force essentially not remaining dormant, That everything is a product of the perturbation of the inertial plane, and the inertial plane being God. So that if God decides to be 100% at rest, then it appears that absolutely nothing exists. And as soon as God decides to make any effort or motion at all, then everything springs into action.
So the same thing that's causing what was Jim saying something?
Jim said God can't decide to be at rest. He just is.
Do you have the question thing open?
I agree, Jim. I obviously we're getting pretty deep into theory and metaphor at this point. Oh,
him thinking would be a perturbance or deciding.
This girl says, I thought. Well, thank you, Lilo. So Lilo says, I thought all flat earthers were disinformation spreaders, specifically for the purpose of making conspiracy theorists look crazy. but you seem really sensible and serious, which is nice for a change. You're an artist. You should have better paper lying around, Alger. I like you already, Lilo. We do. It's just upstairs.
Is it somebody that you know?
No, she just heard me on Gorski. Appreciate it. That's awesome. We've got much better paper, but I wanted to hand Adam something now.
I drew a frog.
Besides, I'll tell you a secret. It's on the back of the circle of fifths. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
I made an assumption that the moon in this model is a ball. Is that correct? Is the moon a
It
ball?
describes the sun and the moon and the stars as separate orbs outside of this realm, as orbs. So yes, it would be. So the real moon.
Orb meaning a ball.
Yeah, the real moon would be a sphere. The sphere that we see in the sky that appears as the moon is actually just a holograph.
The holographic projection of the actual orb that we from the surface see is not in a place. Is that correct? It's your eye. There's not a location.
Right. It's literally a holograph. It's like it's a holograph from the fourth dimension. That's how I would describe it. Like if people watch this later that know more about the model than I do, let me know what you think, because I want to know if you're going to follow up and watch this. You know.
And part of the motivation a big part of it is the Book of Enoch.
Yes.
But another part of that is just the way you see the moon. It looks weird because it's like you could see the sky. Is that part of it? Like when you see the moon, it just looks like kind of a weird image of light. It doesn't look like an object.
Well, in the daylight sky, it appears that you can see the blue sky.
Because I've heard that from other flat earthers.
Right. Well, but then it to me also in the night sky, when you see the moon, the full circle of the moon is visible, and only the crescent portion is illuminated. You know, whatever phase the moon's in, whatever's darkened at night, you see the line that completes the circle of the moon. Okay, in the daylight, you don't see that at all. You see right through the moon like you can see the blue sky behind it. Okay, so if you really want to mess with yourself, find someone who you trust that's below the equator, and both of you get your hands on a decent camera and get on a hangout like this or on your telephone and say, okay, there's the moon. We both see it. 3, 2, 1, go, and take a picture, and then go upload them and put them side by side. Okay, so then
you're saying on people that in a spherical model would be on two opposite ends of the earth.
You'd potentially be on two opposite ends of the earth, and what you get is the moon inverted to itself. You get a parallel image of it, so that if the crescent's on this side for this person, it's on this side for that person, and one appears in complete darkness and the other one appears in the blue light of day. Okay, so this is two moons. It's not one moon. It's two images of the same moon being projected and divided
like a
through
mirror
a lens above our heads.
Similar to, like, the way it acts would be very similar to a mirror.
Right.
But why does it turn into like crescent phases and stuff?
That's a great question. I think it's all, again, I think that's electromagnetic behavior. And I think that's probably electromagnetic behavior that we're just witnessing the projected hologram of, and whatever's really happening is happening on a grand scale outside of this realm. So we're just getting a picture show. Sorry.
So there's more going on in the outer realm that's like a...
Well, it's impossible to conceptualize except that we're seeing what I would call noumena. And I know most people don't even know what that means. All we're witnessing here as far as the sun and the moon, especially in my opinion, are noumena.
What's a noumena?
Evidence of something but not something. Okay, so shadow is just noumena. It's not, we can't capture a shadow.
Right. That's Ken Wheeler stuff, right?
Well, I mean, that's
like type of stuff that he talks about.
Yes, he definitely references the difference between, that's why he jokes that you can confound or confuse physicists and quantum theorists by trying to hold them down on the definition of a field, because all the field does is allow you descriptions of noumena, but it doesn't show you the actual phenomenon. So you can't quantify the field. You can't say the field starts here and it ends there, or it's this wide, or it's this narrow, or it's this. What you're seeing is what happened in the field, but you can't actually identify the field. And I know that sounds really far out and weird, but that's true about so many things. As far as talking about Ken Wheeler, it's true about, okay, love is not quantifiable. I love you 10 amounts, Adam. Love doesn't work that way, right? You know,
Only 10 amounts?
Yeah, only 10 amounts, Jim says. Like, no, like an indescribable amount is the amount of love I have for my brother. It's not something you can quantify. It's not something that is gonna go up and down.
I think love is a verb. Like, it's not, you can't measure an action the same way.
Right. I mean, that's a perfect example of the same thing, is that it's not, I'd say that noumena is a good way to think of everything being like a verb. Everything is, all you're seeing is the residual results of
that's
some
very
kind of action somewhere. There's actions happening.
Who's that guy? There's a philosopher that was all about Heraclitus. Everything's changing. You can't step into the same sea more than once.
Yeah. Would you say Heraclitus?
I think that's his name.
Because
I mean, it might be pronounced different ways. Heraclitus or something.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that you can't measure the same butterfly wing twice. You can't. Nothing's actually repeatable. That when you repeat it.
I have a thing I wanted to bring up earlier. So, are you familiar at all with Parmenides?
I just heard the name. I don't.
Parmenides, I think, is the most important philosopher of all time in understanding. If you're going to try to figure out your metaphysics, you have to listen to Parmenides.
Okay.
And the atomists came up with atomism as a reaction to Parmenides. Atoms originally were called Parmenidean entities.
That's really hard to say. Okay, cool.
So what Parmenides basically said was, there's no such thing as nothing. There's nothing.
Yes, this rings a bell.
Exists. There's no. That's an invalid concept. You can't have zero of something. There can never be a point in time where there was nothing, because there's no such thing as an existence of nothing. And he takes it to an extreme where there's not even places in the universe where there's nothing. There can't be a spot, an empty spot.
Right.
Because he has a convincing way of articulating it. So back before the Democritus and those guys who came up with atomism,
right?
Basically, it was generally accepted that, Parmenides figured out this thing, and what the fuck are we supposed to do? Like basically, and so Parmenides was crazy.
They had to go and invent real nothing.
They admitted that they were they admitted that they didn't know that it was a paradox, but they just have to accept the paradox. Zeno was one of the earlier guys too. Zeno was the what do you call it? Follower of Parmenides. So Zeno's paradox of Achilles and the tortoise, like you can never motion. He basically said motion can't happen because if you cut something in half and try to get halfway there, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Hold on just a second, because this I don't want to ignore Lilo here. She says, I'm in New Zealand and my partner is, hold on, I gotta dismiss this thing. We go back up.
I didn't notice it.
Yeah, I know, we're getting deep here. So I'm in New Zealand, my partner is in the UK. It's daytime here, I can see the sun, but nighttime there. He can't see the moon, it's cloudy. Why can I see the sun, but he can't? Not trying to ask a gotcha question, but I missed your explanation for this on Worski. I hope you go back on the show. I hope Andy will have me back to Adam Race Worski, they call him. That's a joke and incentive. So the answer to your question, Lilo, would be that because of the limit of the human eye in tandem with or in combination with perspective, and also the refraction of light through the density of the atmosphere is going to prevent you from seeing something that's so far away, no matter what it is, even something as bright as the sun. That's funny, Adam Worski.
Wait, how big is the sun?
Our concept of the sun is
actual orb out there.
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think we've never determined to try and.
Well, within this, it has to be smaller than the surface of the Earth, right?
Certainly, yeah, yeah, and much, much closer. And we've even speculated that it's relative to every individual to some degree.
And do you think that is the proportion of this somewhat accurate, or would the sphere be way bigger?
No, I think that's pretty close to what we've speculated.
So here I have this, the edge of this, and then there's like space here. Does it touch? Does it like kiss the sphere, or does
I think
there's space between?
I think it's floating there, like.
So there's like, what I don't know what you not space, but there's whatever this is. There's content between the surface of the Earth and the boundary of that sphere.
And I don't have any speculation or answer for what might be in that space.
And there's nothing cool going on down here.
Well, there at the bottom. Okay, so there would be dirt and then water, and then
like the bottom of the
very bottom would be ice.
You called the flat part the Earth,
right?
And this ground is still the Earth.
Well, there's the Earth, and then there's still at least 8 or more miles of Earth, definitely down, and then underneath that would be water, and then underneath that water would be ice. So, but you could still keep it all in that exact same shape.
So there's like water and ice and shit.
Right, and the ice on the bottom, to me, that's the same as like when they make the levitating disc.
So what do you call that?
The Great Deep,
like the
frozen deep.
Okay. So that's the deep.
So you got Lilo. If you go to my YouTube and go to playlists and go to my Flat Earth playlist and look for the ones that are specifically about refraction, angular resolution. Then that'll at least give you some things to think about. And you're right about the flat Earth movement was intentionally brought out, in my opinion, by the powers that be to divide everyone and definitely to make conspiracy theorists look even crazier than they already look. And so I don't think that that's a wrong assessment. But I also the true double whammy is that it's actually flat too. So that's an impossible concept for most people to get their head around. Even JF said that, like, well, wait, if it's a psyop, aren't you falling for it? And it's like, yes and no. Well, to me, it always makes me think of that scene from The Princess Bride where they're trying to figure out the poison exchange, and it's the double inverted inversion. And of course, you fool, I would never drink the poison because you switched it, and I know that you switched it, so I switched it also. And now, that to me, that's the real world we're living in. Like, well, we could tell them it's flat and make them look stupid for believing it, even though it is. And someone's like, yeah, do that.
Oh yeah, so the atomists.
Jim went like this.
So Parmenides and the atomists.
Yeah, go ahead.
Parmenides said you can't have nothingness, but his conclusion was absurd that since there can't be empty space, therefore motion doesn't actually occur.
Right.
And there's just this like oneness. There's no stuff. There's nothing happening. There's just this like pure one sphere.
Right.
It's just one sphere, and that's all that exists.
Yeah, his conclusion was what I said, that if God exists and is at rest, then it's an undisturbed inertial plane.
So that's the Parmenidean universe. There's just this one. He doesn't really call it a sphere, but it's kind of sort of like depicted as a sphere, like symbolically. So that's Parmenides. And the ancient Greeks said, fuck, this guy's right about the nothingness, but obviously he has to be wrong about motion because we can see motion. So how do we fix this? So what the atomists did, they said, we admit that you're right, but we also know that we believe that there's motion. So we're going to take your spheres and put them in a void. And now we believe there's like a bunch of spheres.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of Parmenidean entities, and maybe they bounce around, and that's how stuff happens. And then from then on, no one questioned it.
Yeah. And
then obviously things have, I mean, it's more than that. But, metaphysically, like, okay, that's like the kind of metaphysical framework we're going to interpret things in, and we're going to find evidence and interpret it against that idea. And no one really tried to resolve the law of Parmenides, that you can't have emptiness. No one really tried to resolve how do you get motion and still follow the law of Parmenides. Descartes tried to, and he had these like swirling, like everything was like more like a ether, it was like everything was physical. There was no empty space. There was just different densities, and everything moved in these like cycles. Like he had a cycle model where the entire universe was filled up, and stuff moved, but it like moved like in circles.
Right, like one of those sliding puzzle boards.
Yep.
Where because you get motion, but there's no empty spaces.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to get the picture to be complete, you have to everything kind of like that GIF you made.
Yeah,
of how a wave.
You have, if you don't grasp Parmenides, there's no way you're ever going to understand lore theory. Like lore theory attempts to resolve the problem of Parmenides with the torus thing, like the Pac-Man screen.
Right.
Like you can move stuff over here and it comes out on this edge.
Right. Okay.
And that resolves all the problems.
That's funny that it comes back to because that's a huge the people
Like
that aren't
Pac-Man.
Yep. And Adam's talking about the lore theory, which I mean he's been talking about this on and off for years, and I've never had
theory, Adam?
Yeah, it's Adam Lore's theory of the universe.
That's just my own thing I made up. That's not
Right.
like a
Right.
You're not gonna find a book about it.
The lore who came up with the theory is the one that's sitting here off camera.
So what is the lore theory?
He said, "What is the lore theory?"
I could try to explain it.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's
Let me read this girl's question first here, because I don't. We got a new fan. We're gonna do this every week. Leo, I guess. I kept calling you Lilo. Is that right? There's an L in there, Leo. So there's heaps of disinformation out there about 9/11 truth movement as well. Makes people who question what really happened look crazy automatically. Sorry to be interrupting. No, that's true. That's just that's disinformation 101. You know, they always parallel stories, and don't feel bad for interrupting. You're one of the main reasons we did this was so that people would have something entertaining to watch and listen to. I mean, I'm going to turn it over to Adam and let him explain his theory of the universe here in a second. But as far as if you go look up my name along with the artist Jesse Waugh, right before the Adam Worski show, Adam Worski.
How do you spell Waugh? Jesse Waugh?
It's Waugh. Jesse Waugh is an exceptional artist. He's living in Barcelona, Spain. And he interviewed me, and we describe, we have a nice conversation about disinformation tactics. Jesse Waugh actually made a video almost 12 years ago now about the fact that nuclear bombs appear to be completely fake. Good night, Jeff. Good to see you, man. And how they took over his forum and his idea and made it look all messed up and stupid so that people wouldn't doubt the veracity of nuclear bombs. But anyway, on that note, let's go over here to hear more about the lore theory. So go ahead, Adam.
So
I'm gonna go ahead and give you the headphones too, so that
right.
if you need to fill the question, you can.
All right, Jim, so I can hear you. I'm gonna.
You can. Oh, you don't.
Okay, so I'm gonna. A little caveat. I cannot explain lore theory in less than probably 2 hours. So this is
Well,
like the short version.
give me the.
There's so many parts of it that you can't really understand it without understanding all of it. But the basic idea.
Where did you come up with it, or why, or I guess, just
it's basically
worldview.
It's kind of like a theory of the structure of the fine scale structure of the universe on the largest scales and smallest scales. So it's like basically instead of like string theory right now is trying to explain atoms and subatomic particles and stuff with all these extra dimensions and stuff, and they're not really able to do it. And they're still basically trying to find a unified theory of the universe, onto the smallest and largest scale. So that's kind of what lore theory attempts to do. It has nothing to do with the planet Earth.
Okay.
I think that the Earth is a sphere, just like everyone else, like 99% of everyone. Or actually, I don't know. Maybe it's less than 99% now. I guess flat Earth is kind of popular.
Hard to say.
But this is basically like the realm of we don't really understand what's going on the subatomic levels and the really huge, large scale structure of the universe and Big Bang and stuff like that. So the basic, if I had to summarize it in like 1 or 2 words or 1 or 2 sentences, the 2 biggest concepts are that the large scale and the small scale eventually meet up. So if you zoomed in close enough on something, you'd eventually see it would start to get bigger and bigger, and then you would be zooming in on, you would be looking at bigger stuff. And then if you zoomed out and you saw bigger and bigger and stuff, you'd eventually start to see like particles and stuff like that.
That really actually kind of makes sense.
So it's like size is like a loop.
Spiral.
Yeah.
Or like a vortex.
Yeah.
But
So it's like instead of like a line, instead of size going from large to small on a line, on a scale, it's like it loops like a circle. If it gets large enough, eventually it starts to get small and vice versa.
or like a Mandelbrot set, sort of.
Sort of, but each little copy of the like on a fractal, it is very much like a fractal, but like think of it like triangles within triangles within triangles.
And triangles being like the simplest space that holds the most mass or something.
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, I'm just throwing stuff out there, I guess.
But like using, this is just like an analogy. Like you said, the Mandelbrot set, a much simpler fraction of fractal would be like triangles within triangles, right?
Okay, I get it.
So that's like a fractal, like it's just a repeating image.
Yeah.
So in lore theory, it's like a fractal, but once you get to the second smaller triangle within, that is the same triangle. It's not a copy. It's not like a new image. It's like you're back to where you started, and you're seeing it again. You're back to where you started. It's not an image. It's like is there.
It is what it was before.
There's only the one triangle,
There's
and
only
then
one
you're just
triangle.
seeing it as if it's like the mirrors, you know, when you have a mirror within a mirror, you see the reflection of two mirrors, and it just looks like it goes down into infinity.
But your perception is that one triangle is all of the triangles and many triangles. Is that what you're kind of saying, I guess? Or
There's just one triangle.
oh, just one.
Yeah. But you can zoom into the triangle, and once you get down to a small enough scale, you'll see the entire triangle again. Once you get to that point,
Wow.
there's no more space. You went through the entire universe. So that's an analogy. That's an analogy. Now, the other part of lore theory is that there is no empty space. The entirety of the universe is not atoms or fields. It's like they're like dense, like everywhere in the universe on the smallest scale is like cubes, like dense cubes moving around. And that's what kind of describes the effects that we see as like particles and wave, like the kind of particle wave duality problem, you know?
Like having a garden hose full of marbles, and you put one marble in on one end, and then instantaneously a marble pops out of the other end.
Right, but it's like that, but like there's marbles everywhere, and it's on a Pac-Man screen.
Oh, and it's a Pac-Man style.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's kind of hard to explain, but basically, so a really important part. This is how this relates to the flat Earth thing. Is that okay? In my model, if you have a larger and larger and larger circle, eventually that circle gets flat, right? And I believe that an infinitely large circle and an infinitely long straight line are identical. An infinitely large circle is not curved at all. It's completely flat. It's a completely straight line. Does that make sense? Like if you imagine a circle growing and growing?
Yeah, well, at infinite size, you can't disprove that as being fact, that they're the same, because we can't comprehend infinite.
Well, in mathematics, that's accepted as being a fact. Like that's true. It's not like that part of my theory isn't my own thing that I made up. That's like if you in like higher mathematics, that's considered true. That what is called a paragon, an infinity-sided polygon is exactly the same as just a straight tiling of line segments. So if you have like a line segment, just a series of line segments, like the number line, for example, is sort of like a series of line segments, right?
Yeah.
So if that's infinite, that's identical to an infinity-sided polygon, which looks like a circle. So in other words, an infinite circle isn't really circular. It's completely flat. It doesn't bend down or up. It just takes up just that one dimension. So that part's kind of hard to understand. If you don't really grasp that, it doesn't really make as much sense why it acts like a Pac-Man screen. But if you understand that, it makes sense how it acts like a circle, but it's like a circle that's just a straight line.
Because at every point you're at the same point.
What?
I think I understand.
I don't think you do, but it's hard to get. It's like a thing that you once you get it, but it's kind of hard to explain in words without visuals.
Yeah, I would like to hear some visuals. Or see some visuals, sorry.
Just think of like smaller circles and then getting larger and larger. And that once it gets, actually, I'll have to draw it out. But anyways, so basically, that connects to the Pac-Man screen where it's like that's a flat torus, right? That's where if you go far enough in one direction in the universe, you'll eventually get back to where you started in the other direction. And the thing about lore theory is that you're doing that without curvature. It's basically like a flat circle. Like it acts like a circle, but it's a completely flat line.
Okay.
So if you want to think of it, just think of it like Pac-Man screen.
Yeah. So
think of the entire universe as being filled with solid cubes that move along a Pac-Man screen. They move one way or the other.
Okay.
And then there's all these different patterns that it can move in, speed that up, and then you get these like effects that look like waves and particles and stuff, and zoom out and you see matter, zoom out further. Eventually you're going to zoom out so far that you're back to where you started.
Well, you'll see your own back?
Yep.
Yep. That's pretty awesome.
That's the gist of lore theory. There's more to it than that, but
I bet.
It has nothing to do with the Earth being flat, other than the fact that it's really important in lore theory as an analogy to understand that up close the Earth is flat. On a globe model, up close the Earth is flat, and then you zoom out and it's round. But if the globe was infinite, it would be flat.
If the globe was infinite, it would be flat.
Yeah. If an up close section,
it would have to be flat.
Yeah. Like a cross section of the Earth is very, very, very flat. So if the sphere was just larger and larger, it would be flatter and flatter. So there's some similarities.
So and the sphere would be almost impossible to measure as anything but flat.
What sphere? A hypothetical giant Earth?
Yeah.
Well, that's already true of the Earth right now.
Yeah. Well, if it's a sphere.
Yeah. Well, right. The spherical Earth.
Yeah. But I don't know.
The man who's off camera
Earth
is saying the Earth is definitely a sphere.
Yeah. I believe that a sphere. The difference between a ball and a sphere. Do you know the difference between a ball and a sphere? A sphere is the surface of a ball. The ball includes the inside.
Okay. So the Earth is a ball.
So if a little kid says the Earth is a ball, and you're like, "Oh, silly kid, you sound like a dork." Like it's a sphere. No, the kid's right. It's a ball, and the sphere is just the surface of a ball.
So a perfect balloon would be a sphere.
Yeah, just the rubber of the balloon.
Right.
The air.
Yes.
If
the air would complete
a rubber ball is a ball, a balloon is a sphere. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I believe that the Earth is a ball.
Oh, okay.
I was just reading what I just don't want to call this board Lilo. It's Leo.
I believe that the Earth is a ball, but when you're close enough to a ball, it's flat.
Right.
So in that sense, the Earth is locally flat, globally curved, and that distinction is very important to make. if you're gonna understand lore theory at least. That's the only place that's important, I guess, that I've ever thought.
I was watching over Jim's shoulder, so I realized that if while you're talking, if I come down here and dance, then I've got some visual. Because otherwise, it was just this picture of my guitar and the amp, like an empty room. So I thought I like the idea of Adam extrapolating and waxing poetic on deep philosophical concepts. So I'm going like this. Mark Sargent does that.
But yeah, you should look into Parmenides.
Yeah, I definitely I recognize the name, and I remember after you said that, I remembered that idea that he was the person that I remember that conflict, but I never studied it. I remember it being brought up or me reading it somewhere that he came up with the idea that nothingness can't exist. This is a nonsense idea, and that they had to react to it. But I didn't realize that was the meaning of atoms. Yeah.
If you go read the early atomists, they're talking about Parmenides. They acknowledge the law of Parmenides. They call the first atoms are called Parmenidean ones.
Yeah.
Parmenidean. There's many Parmenidean entities in a void. They say it's impossible for a void to exist, but we have to put it in our model because we don't know how else to do it.
Right.
And so we're just going to make up a bunch of Parmenidean ones and put them in a void, which we're not allowed to, but that's the only way we know how to make it.
Yes, and we're all still stuck with it today, that their nonsense solution. Well, because I mean, I understand, I'm not criticizing them. The issue is that if only something exists and there's no such thing as nothing, then that leaves us zero room. It's infinite density then.
Yeah, there's no such thing as density. There's just on or off. If there is something or isn't, but there's no such thing as off. So it's not ones and zeros. It's all ones.
Right.
There's all that can be is ones. So the ones are moving around is what I think. You're just moving a bunch of ones up and down and left and right really fast.
Right.
In the same way that time moves forward, I just think that those lines can move forward and backward, and that's the difference between
just like that
space and space and time in lore theories. They're the same thing, only time just happens to be moving in one direction the entire time. Was there another question?
She's just agreeing with you. She's saying, I agree that it's a flat plane on an individual level from our small perspective as individual humans, but the man off camera seems to be saying it is a globe.
Yeah, I'm not a flat earther.
Yes. Adam Moore is not a flat earther.
Except for in the sense that I make the distinction that on a globe, it's not that it seems, quote unquote, seems flat up close. That's what people say. It seems flat up close. It is flat. That's the thing that people struggle with.
Right. Well, because to them, it can't be both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, which I understand that it could potentially be both, but I think if that was the case, the reason that I still
she's so confused. What's confusing? Like I believe in normal.
She says I was. She gets.
Oh! I misread.
No, yeah. There's two flat earthers here and one non-flat earther.
Yeah.
Or I guess one very.
The Earth is locally flat, globally curved.
Right.
In topology, that is like not a controversial thing.
No, well, to me, people just need to realize how surveyors work. If you look up surveying, there's two types of surveying. There's plane surveying, and then there's geodetic surveying. And it doesn't turn to geodetic surveying where they allegedly measure and account for curvature until something like 270 kilometers in circumference. Okay, that's an enormous swath of ground. If we're sitting, we go draw a 270-mile circle around us. It's a terrific amount of area to say we always act as if this is flat. When we want to build something, when we want to run, we're going to run railroad from here to the other side of the circle. It's flat.
So it's not act as if, though. That's the thing. Like, I'll use an example. Like, let's say if you were building a giant circle the size of, like, okay, my reference right now is as if the Earth is a ball, right?
Right.
Okay, let's say just for the second, within the context of a ball, Earth, spherical Earth. Okay, you're building a giant Earth-sized circle out of Legos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're stacking them together. Right. At some point, you're going to have to stop making a straight line and make one go down.
Yes.
There's going to be 100 zillion straight Legos first that are 100% completely flat. There's no bending yet.
Right.
It doesn't, quote unquote, seem flat. There is flatness for a certain point before you put that one Lego down.
Just like drawing in paint.
Yeah, exactly. If you made a circle out of pixels, if you made an Earth-sized circle out of pixels, how many of those pixels are right next to each other?
Yeah, most of them.
Millions.
Yeah.
Probably. That doesn't, quote unquote, seem flat. It really actually is. There isn't curvature yet until you get over here. I think that people don't like acknowledge that, and then that's why people like are so even so much against the flat Earth, even like stronger. I think.
It's funny. Oh,
Is it storming?
oh yeah, it's still going. I think. Yeah, maybe we should start to wrap it up, huh?
Sure.
Unless you have it. Tune in next week for Lore Theory Part 2.
Yeah. I've never really been, even like if I don't know, I'm trying to explain Lore Theory to Bryce. Like I've explained it to him for over hours and hours and hours. It's like no one really understands what I'm talking about. It's like too much. It doesn't really make sense until you really grasp all of the concepts and see why it leads to the other concepts.
Right.
So it's like if you don't really understand all the pieces, it just seems like a magical Pac-Man screen. You don't understand why it acts like that. It just seems like a magical explanation.
Right. No, that's an easy, simple way for people to imagine it without understanding the concept fully. Because I think I have a vague idea of what you mean, but I would want more information to resolve the idea that it's programmed that way. It's because it's a simulation. This is the kind of excuse people give usually for this. Like in some of the flat Earth models, people say, "Well, we think it's definitely a diamond-shaped map, so it's a square on its side." And now things exit and enter east to west, as if there's a time-space jump or something. That like you leave. So to explain, my friend who was in the Navy, and he says he's left on his aircraft carrier traveling west from San Diego, gone to Hawaii, and then gone from Hawaii to the Philippines, from the Philippines to the Middle East, from the Middle East back towards home. So in that model, somewhere there in the Pacific Ocean, he would have vanished in a time-space continuum or whatever you want to call it, in a time jump, and arrived somewhere on the other side of the map. Well, I don't...
Like he believes that happened to him.
No. He's absolutely a globe believer.
Oh, okay. But you're saying there are people who are flat Earth people that believe that it's like a Pac-Man
that speculate that it is actually physically like a Pac-Man screen, which I think is just nonsense. I think it's more likely that they lied about circumnavigating anything, and that the map is actually arranged in such a way that it appears to us, it works effectively for us to use as a navigation tool, and it appears to all line up and make sense, but that there's actually a conundrum or a trick that they've pulled that makes things angled and or laid out in such a way that it's not, it works for us as a model, but it's not the actual reality that we're looking at. That's the likely solution I have based on the current set of beliefs I have, that I don't see anything that convinces me that there's curvature anywhere on the Earth. I don't trust NASA or any of the space agencies. I think they are all in collusion with one another while appearing to be only.
So if you literally went up like in a rocket ship into space and you started to see it, let's say assuming that there is a ball Earth for this question, and then you started to see it, what I honestly think, if I was you, if I believed that the Earth was flat, and I supposedly was in this rocket ship going up in space, and then I supposedly saw it curving, I'd be like, I don't believe you. I think you guys are tricking me.
Well, I'd be super skeptical of the.
So it seems like it'd be really hard to. I don't know. I think that people don't appreciate it's really hard to change someone's like core metaphysics. Once you're convinced that the universe started with a big bang, it's like it's really hard not to think of just things like that, like the overall like way that reality works.
No, and that's what I've always been, someone who never accepted the core metaphysics at all of Big Bang, billions of years, evolution, atheism,
Mhm.
any of those things, I've always leaned more towards the idea of something like a Christian God or something like a creator God. I mean, I still think that those are weak terms to. I think that the ancient texts are right to say that's too heralded of a that you shouldn't. You should give it enough respect to not try and give it a categorical name.
So if you flew up, let's say, I don't know anything about this, but let's say if there's a high enough point you can fly in an airplane to start to really see it curve, do you think that you would be like, oh, fuck, they're right? Or would you be like, the Enoch model needs this modification because there does appear to be some curvature?
What I think is that, for one, I would think maybe it's my eye because my eye isn't used to being up this high or it isn't designed to be up this high and this far from anything.
I think because there's so many parts of what you'd have to. I think that it's very logical to believe that most of your beliefs are right, and that
people can't function otherwise. I mean, that's why I say that I'm a person that's unique being, and I mean, I tested myself. I know it's not. I'm not speculating. I tested myself with little Jordan Peterson's little test that he has online. I kicked him $10, and it tests the big 5 personality traits. And my level of openness was like 97% as far as being creatively open to the concept of new ideas. So that puts only 2 people to the right of me that potentially are more open than I am. If you call me on the phone tomorrow and say, Sean, there's 6 feet of water in my bathroom just standing here, I won't say, oh shit, Adam's losing his mind. I'll say, all right, I'm coming over. I'll grab my camera. Let's see this. And when I get there, it's a lie or a trick. I'll be disappointed that the phenomenon you're just, whereas most people are just like, no, that's stupid. That's impossible. No matter what, you're wrong. Because that can't happen, right? Whereas if you say, hey, there's a 5-foot standing column of water in my kitchen, I can't explain it, I'm going to come over expecting it to be there.
I have an interesting question for you. Let's say that, I don't know how, but somehow you became convinced that the Earth really is a ball.
Mm-hmm.
What would that change about any of your other beliefs? Like, how would that affect all the other stuff that you believe? Like, you basically believe that it's a conspiracy, like they're like trying to trick you to believe this, right?
Well, I think it's even greater than that. I mean, I don't think that it's a conspiracy of men. I think that men at the very tip top are complicit, and I think that it's probably that there's even hidden and secret men that we don't know anything about. That's why I was talking about Silmarillion. In that, the spirits.
So it's like a metaphysics. It's like a
it's archons,
like Plato or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Your daemon.
The shadows in the cave or something.
That we all right. It is. Yeah. I think that it's that there's spiritual powers that feed off of us here, and that they influence men on a grand scale, and that those men somehow benefit from being in cahoots with and I'm not saying this like some random theory. This is what you find if you chase every conspiracy to the top. Aleister Crowley is divining information from someone. All the books of all of the prophets, they're all divining information from someone. Whether it be positive or negative doesn't matter. You go look at
Alice Bailey,
Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey. All these people, they all have some kind of higher power that they end up communing with and then making grandiose plans. Even someone like Tracy Twyman, just like making a magazine when she's a teenage girl and playing with the Ouija board, ended up starting, that's the lady that wrote the Baphomet books and everything. I've shared her. She's the one that she chose some of your music, but then you like that's cool. You used it, but don't put my name on it. Well, the same thing, and she's on a tiny scale. She's just nearby over kind of in the Portland area, and she started communicating with spirit entities on the Ouija board, and it ended up starting a real cult where people were sending her blood oaths, and like it's all in her memoirs and everything. So if she can do that on the tiniest scale, just a lady from Portland, compared to somebody like Aleister Crowley, who, I mean, he was definitely an admitted intelligence agent too. It's not like he's just a black magician. He's a known intelligence agent too. Intelligence and black magic go hand in hand.
Crowley was?
Mm-hmm. Huh.
He's the Satanist.
Yeah, he's the most famous Satanist. Yeah, but all those guys. That's the other thing too, is that all intelligence work and all metaphysical space exploration and stuff. All that stuff is all full of occultists, Masons, and I don't.
John
it's
D.
not John D. Yeah, John
Original
D.
007.
was not only the Queen's lead magician, but he was also her spy master. And then like Jack Parsons is a really super famous NASA rocket scientist, and he's totally a black, like a Thelemite. And a Thelemite is a person who follows Crowley. That's Crowley's religion that he started, is Thelema. You know, when you hear people say, "Do as thou will be the whole of the law," that's the same as a Christian saying, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." That's the main mantra of Thelema is, "Do as thou wilt." That's Crowley's religion that he started. Well, Jack Parsons is probably the most popularized name related to NASA as far as rocket science. He's like the Tom Cruise of rocket science. Total OTO Thelemite.
So in Plato's cave, you have guys, they're chained to the walls of the cave,
Mm-hmm.
and there's people like holding up objects. They see, and there's a fire, and then they see the shadows on the cave wall, and that's all they know of reality.
Right.
That's like a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
But then one of the guys breaks through,
Mm-hmm.
and he goes outside. And he always thought that the sun was this like thing, but then he goes outside and he sees like the real sun.
Right.
And he like goes insane because he can't handle like the reality of it or something.
Well, what happens is he comes back and tries to tell the prisoners, and they kill him.
So in the analogy, if that's the analogy, what would convince you? What would convince you of? I guess you're already convinced of that. But I mean, what would the equivalent of leaving the cave be? Like going outside, because you basically think it's like it's almost not so much a simulation, but this is like reality isn't really as it seems, basically.
Right. I would agree with that. I don't like the idea of a simulation because we're inside of it, so you can't. Well,
or like the Matrix or something.
Yeah, something we're doing in here is a simulation. You could prove that this is a simulation if you pull me out of it and show me that there are a bunch of people asleep in slimy pods, and that they're being fed information into their brain, and that there's a real world outside of this. That's okay. Then we're in a simulation. But as far as saying this is a simulation, like, well, you know, it's a pretty good one because the drum rings. You know, But like you said, okay, first and foremost, if someone offered for me to take a ride in a rocket, I would be pretty fucking highly suspect in any circumstance. Even if I had become a fellow billionaire alongside of them or whatever, I would be like, it's really weird for no good reason to have the opportunity to go that high up in the air. I mean, a U-2 spy plane or something, okay, that's more feasible. But to go high enough that you're saying that we would breach the alleged barrier of atmosphere and continue
that's the problem. Like, it would be unbelievable that someone would put that much money into like
to give
flying a flat earther up in sky. Like,
right.
If I think it's more reasonable to think, yeah, right, you guys are just trying to trick me.
Right. So I'd already.
So it'd have to be almost like in the context of some other thing you're doing that happens to be.
So for me to go, I would already have to be like, well, first, if this was a real situation and they were offering it to me, I'd be like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to spend the money to go explore the edge. So if you guys have ways to get the chains or the reins off and get people out of our way.
And then they're going to say, no, we don't want to do that. And you say, see, it proves my theory.
Right, because then I just want to go to Hawaii and go west, you know.
But can't you already do that?
Can you? I don't know. I can't. I don't have the money or the ability to. And when you look into it, like right now, if you go on the internet and look at a site called, is it called shipping.com? I'd have to look. Let's see, is it called shipping.com? Let me look it up real quick.
Like, I think if I don't know, in a way, not that I question that you believe that, but it's like I feel like I would be really, really fascinated to find out what is happening at the edge of the earth if I thought that it was. Well, there was an edge of the earth that I would want to find out.
Because honestly, one of the craziest pieces of the Enoch theory is that the Pacific Ocean essentially doesn't exist. that they've rearranged the map and everything in such a way that the Pacific Ocean isn't really there the way that they make us believe, that it covers the entire backside of the planet. And it's this huge, like you've seen the Google Earth image of, you rotate the ball around.
Yeah, there's certain, like even on a globe or something, like there's certain
like
views where it's like almost all you see is the ocean.
Yeah, you can almost not see any land in it.
That's the Pacific Ocean.
Right, and that's the Pacific Ocean. So there's ways to theorize that's a,
like compensating for trying to fit the puzzle pieces together so they invent
and it's a way to hide something that's really there, something like Atlantis or a hidden continent or land where people and things exist that we don't know anything about. That maybe this is where the real people who are leading and orchestrating things preside is in. I mean, and this is over and over again in fiction, in stories, in mythology. It's in that.
So if you were a pilot, though, you could test that. Like if you had some extra money, and you either were a pilot or someone that was also had an identical view as you guys could go.
Yeah, there's people doing it right now.
And fly over there.
There's wealthy people that I've seen on YouTube and talked to them in the comments section talking about there's weird things, Adam. Like there's certain flights that are listed for sale. And so people say, I don't think that's a real flight. And someone says, of course it's a real flight. Well, then someone with enough money, because they have a good enough job or they make enough money to say, well, whatever, I'm going to book it. And they went and tried to book a number of these flights and you can't book them. So some of these are dummy flights, according to people. I mean, I haven't taken my credit card and tried to book a $1,000 flight from like Buenos Aires to the United Arab Emirates or whatever it was. That's not a good example because that might be a real flight. Whatever these flights were, some of them, people tried to book them and they were like, well, dude.
Was that like New Zealand to Santiago or something?
Your cat just tried to destroy your glass piece. He was really careful, but hold on. I'm going to do something here, Jim. Just like. He was standing over the top of this like this.
So basically, there are people who are that skeptical and are like exploring and trying to like figure this stuff out.
Well, at least allegedly. I mean, it's just people in YouTube comments threads, and it's not anyone I've talked to in person.
Because the Hollow Earth people, they would do that. They would like pay like a bunch of money.
I said it right here.
And like do these like experiments and stuff, but they would like
invest
a lot of money.
The rectilineator was a huge project by the Hollow Earth people. Where they built this huge long thing trying to determine if the horizon actually curves up at a distance, and some people believe it does. To me, it's really funny that I'm suspicious of it all because I see.
Yeah, why are you so suspicious of it?
Because of my studying of the past, that they bring things out as a distraction or a division or as kind of a way to rile people up, and then eventually revolution happens. Okay, so the French Revolution, if you go study the very, very, very first conspiracy theory you can find anywhere, Auguste Barruel, maybe it's Barruel, Augustin Barruel. He claims that the Enlightenment philosophists, that's what he calls them.
Philosophists.
Yeah, it's an intentional pun or a play on words for him to insult them.
Okay.
He's combining philosopher with sophist, so that he's calling them philosophists.
Oh,
he's saying that they're not actually seeking wisdom, that they're creating false wisdom to sell it. And so the Enlightenment, we can just call them the Enlightenment philosophers, were essentially promoting what we have today, liberty and I can't remember the other main word, fraternity. Liberty and fraternity is, I think, the words that they used. But prior to the French Revolution, they did all of this work to disseminate their new philosophy into the minds of people that were nearby, the kings and the priests and the people in positions of power at that time, which would have only been the throne and the pulpit, or if there's a better word than pulpit, because it wasn't really pulpit, it was the church. So you've got the divine power and the kingly power, and they're linked to each other because the king defaults to the church to a degree, but he's also the king. So there's this, it's just like we read in all the old books of people like all the old authors. I can't think of off the top of my head, the Three Musketeers, whoever wrote that. It's the church and the king those are the political power juggernauts. Not like today where we have democracy and other forms of government. Back then it was different. But so before the French Revolution, they intentionally got their philosophers and their people close to and involved with the church and the king. And then the French Revolution was them externalizing the fact that they had gained all this power, so that they first put all the ideas in everyone's heads by putting their people and their information and their pamphlets and printing and tracts close to the king, close to the pope or whatever. And then when it was time, they had everyone take action. They had the French Revolution, and they considered that the externalization of their movement, of their enlightenment, because that's what they called it, was the French Enlightenment. And that all conspiracy essentially stems back to that was the first play for what we would call a full world or global conspiracy. So what I see is the same thing happening again with studying communitarianism, seeing that they're trying to make something like a one world religion that focuses on nature. They just gave a river somewhere in South America, or I don't remember where it was, but they just passed a law that the river had sentience, that it had life,
is it a legal person?
That it was animate, that it had animus. And then if you listen to people like Gordon White, who's a famous chaos magician who has a podcast called Rune Soup, he says redundantly that his goal is, and when he says his goal, he's talking about himself and lots of other magicians like him. And I mean real magicians, not stage magic. People who perform magic and get results. You tell them, that's just nonsense, it doesn't work. Well, you're wrong. They're actually performing magic and they're getting results. He's got familiars. It's the same as Tracy Twyman. You can't tell her she's nothing's happening on the Ouija board. She's communicating, something's happening. It's not a hoax, it's not a ruse. She's divining something's happening. People don't believe it's real, but people that practice it know it's real because they get results. They do it. Gordon White says he's trying to bring animism back to the big table. So that sounds like such a subtle and plain thing to say, but if you look at
that's a subtle. I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, the way that he presents it is.
What does that mean? To bring
the idea that everything is animate.
Right.
Back
into the public
into the center stage consciousness.
Yeah. Similar to kind of how flat Earth is actually coming
right.
To the
and so that's what I think it is. I think if once they have enough people.
Wait, are you saying that I kind of miss what you're saying. You're saying that animism is something that you disagree with, or you do agree with?
Well, I wouldn't even make it that simple. I think. I do agree that everything kind of has a nature and a spirit and a life in it, but I don't agree that means that we should canonize it or hallow it. I believe all things stem from, for lack of a better way to describe it, from the spirit of God that becomes the spirits of God that becomes the spirits of everything. And I mean everything, not just mammals or not just lizards or not just fish, but everything. I think water has life. All these metals have something like life.
See, and that's why I think it's foolish for someone to try to debate with your position, because it's they're not really trying to understand what you're saying, and they're not really trying to convince you otherwise.
No, they just want to make.
They just hear something you say and they try to think of something they heard and gotcha.
Right. It's just a ridicule. That's why I didn't try and bring a hard debate, because I knew that JF could not, in his position, consider the position I'm in. We can't communicate with one another. We can be.
I think if I were to debate you, it would take years and years, and even if I broke down the pieces that I think need to be broken down, you're obviously gonna think of new stuff that I have to debate against. So it's it would be very hard to me, that almost is to me
that's
that
not
almost
debate.
seems
That's apologetics in a genuine way that it's like me trying to, if you're a heroin junkie and I really want you to stop because I love you, I'm not gonna come up with well, it's going to make your teeth fall out.
Yeah.
That's a pretty stupid argument. Like, I know, a real reason to like somehow imbue or imbibe the will to live back in you is not going to be some fucking light switch you flip. I have to trick you into wanting to live without smack, and then encourage you that you're able to take the first step, and then continue on from there into, something better than that,
So to me, the way I see it is like,
and I think that's a funny metaphor because the idea of you taking drugs is really funny. Like, it's not going to happen.
I'm like an anti-drug guy. But I don't know. To me, I feel like I probably, instead of like disagreeing, like I already so like full-heartedly disagree with the concept of a globally flat Earth. But I feel like you're going to notice things because you don't believe the mainstream story. You're going to notice things about the bullshit that people say, and you're going to point it out, even though I don't think the flat Earth part is right. But you're going to point out things about other things that people didn't notice, and a lot of those things are going to be right. And there's a lot to learn from someone, even if you disagree with their fundamental beliefs.
It. I mean, I got over immediately upon realizing that I couldn't disprove this, the idea that I was going to be. I mean, it took me a couple weeks, but because for a minute I didn't even want to oh, you want to watch Star Wars? I'm like, fuck Star Wars. Because if you reject the idea of outer space for a minute, you go through this thing that's like, I don't, like, fuck you. It's all offensive for just a minute. And for some people, it's permanently offensive. They just become permanently offended at the idea of science fiction, outer space, all CGI, not just what you're getting from NASA, becomes this like, fuck you. But I got over that. Like, I can still enjoy reading a science fiction novel, watching Blade Runner or whatever, because if I believe that's the world we're in, that we're under this enormous magic spell of delusion, of brainwashing, then I was always in it. I'm still in it. The difference is I feel like I've managed to see through it a little bit, and that's okay. And I don't expect other people to come along with me. That's why I finally came out and said something. Because it's been 3 years. It's like, I'm not.
Wait. So this is something that I noticed in the interview that you did, and you keep saying, like, you've only been studying this for 3 years, but I remember you were at least questioning gravity and the spinning of the Earth and stuff way further than that.
That's true.
I remember at least early 2000s, you were just like, I don't know if I buy the whole gravity thing.
That's funny that you
and the
remember
spinning Earth, and it's like
that's proof of what I said.
My reaction to that was like, that's mentally retarded. And then I was like, wait a minute. Wait, if you think about it, it is fucking weird that you just accept, everything's spinning around and all that stuff. It's like, that doesn't seem.
That's why the first line.
It is odd that it doesn't seem like that stuff is happening.
The first line in the song is, "Today I remember that I'd forgotten the Earth was flat."
Right, yeah.
Because I did forget. Me and Johnny years ago. Johnny's a man.
Flying has influenced that too, right? Like you get out in an airplane, it's like, what does it look like?
If you fly from here to the UK, it doesn't look like you're on anything like a ball. It looks like a long, flat, extended plane. And if you watch jet airplanes fly 100 feet off the surface of the ocean for 200 miles at as fast as they can go on video, it doesn't look like they're somehow managing to curve the plane down along the edge of a ball. They're flying like this for a long, extended, straight line, so it's. But no, I did. Me and Johnny years ago found a website that had all these wild, crazy, far-out Christian eccentric theories combined with all this really weird metaphysics of lensing and mirroring. And the reason that when you look through the Hubble Space Telescope is because there's actually a crystalline water outside the edge of our atmosphere that when you hit it, it reflects back and it creates an infinite regress of, that was his theory. But along with that, he's like, the Earth is stationary and flat, and these are all the reasons why. And it was like, when you lift up a helicopter off the ground, if the Earth was moving, why wouldn't the Earth move underneath the helicopter? And then when you set it down, you'd be in a different spot. If the Earth is moving 1,000 miles an hour at the equator.
Okay, so Tim posted a thing about that. Remember that video? And it's like a stand-up comedian.
Oh yeah, and it's completely nonsense. It's just, I know that's everyone's argument is the same argument they taught us in school. Well, when you're driving in a car, you know, if you throw the tennis ball up in the air, it stays with you. So, well, for one thing, all the windows are rolled up in the car. That's what I said to Tim when that thread was there. It's like, okay, so then it's like Spaceballs.
I don't know what you meant by that.
Okay, well, in the movie Spaceballs, the whole joke is that Rick Moranis is the Darth Vader character. He's coming with his huge spaceship to the Earth because the Earth has a good atmosphere and they want the breathable air. And so when they get there, they have to like hinge open the atmosphere because it's like a spherical greenhouse around the Earth. And they hinge it open and put a big vacuum cleaner over the hole and suck the atmosphere out. Okay, so that's one of my best questions for anyone that if someone at least seems like they want to doubt or have a thought for what if or how this might work, how is it that we're sending rockets out through the atmosphere, bringing them back in, and out there is supposed to be a complete vacuum, like 8 VORs of vacuum.
And now you're saying out of the way in outer space.
Yeah, and supposedly it just graduates from whatever density this air is right here to, as we go up from here, less and less and less until it's not just zero but negative blank. I mean, like it's nonsense.
Negative what?
I mean, to be a vacuum is a negative, right? I mean, in comparison to what we are here.
Yeah, I don't.
But
know.
So for there to be a vacuum, there would need to be a boundary or a barrier. We'd have to be protected by the atmosphere like we're inside of a glass globe or something. And then outside of that could be a vacuum. And really, even technically, then I'd say you got a serious problem there.
I think going back to Timmy's video, this is 2 things about that. One, it really, really bugs me that even though I think that the Earth is a ball, the reason people, the excuse that guy gives is not the correct reason. He says the air is moving. That's why it works.
Right.
And that's not
that everything moves.
That's not even what the real like. Even if you ask the scientists, like that's not why. It's not the reason why it works. So it's like people say, "Oh, flat earthers are so stupid. They believe this," and then they have a fake, dumb, retarded bullshit excuse of an argument against it, which itself is just as wrong. If the Earth is a sphere, so it's like they're not really trying to understand. They're just going with like authoritative
to me
arguments.
All that answers are just reassurance for this personal self-reassurance.
But I think another so that's a big thing that I think is interesting about this whole flat Earth thing. But the second thing that I think is really interesting is I don't think people realize that in mainstream physics how unresolved this is and how much of the whole thing of the throwing the ball when you're in an airplane or the plane lifting off.
Right.
That was something that Einstein and all those guys were trying to figure out, and they couldn't figure out. So they invented weird math and put square root of -1 dimensions and stuff, and pretended that the Earth was curved. And it's an unresolved thing. Like nobody understands why gravity does what it does.
Yeah, you can't explain it. Yeah.
It hasn't been explained, and there's this kind of like smug, oh well. Obviously, Newton figured that out like 600 years ago or something. That's like, well, no, it's been an ongoing problem this whole time. No. Nobody's ever fucking figured out how gravity works. So to try to use that as a way to disprove something, it's just like, I don't know. I think it's more interesting to try to figure out what is actually a better explanation of gravity and how it's interacting than to just like, I don't know. I think it's better to question things and experiment the way like you're actually looking at specific empirical things.
It made me happy after we'd been at it for a while because I realized that my curiosity to actually do real science got turned back on, whereas it had been off for probably since I was in junior high school or something. Junior high school or the beginning of high school, like I had no genuine interest in personally experimenting with the physics, mechanics, or biology of anything. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care, whatever, because it's all been done. It's all solved. We have, we're so far advanced that we have all the answers. So why would I go play with a glass of water in a funnel or whatever? And that all went away because I'm like, wait, I don't trust any of this. and you take one of these laser thermometers like you use to test the temperature in something. We have them at work, to see how hot the wax is. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a laser that you point it, and then it says 98 degrees or whatever. If you take that thing, wait for the full moon to come, and you point it at one item, you say you get two identical items, whatever they are, and put one in the shade and one in the moonlight is actually fucking colder than the shade. So
that's something that's testable. Like we could.
Right, and that's something you can do. You can get, even if you just got a regular.
So wait, how does that relate to the theory? Like, is there an explanation for that in your?
Well, just that the moon is its own type of light, that it's not reflected sunlight. That the moon casts its own separate light from the sun. It's a different type of light. I mean, and I encourage people to do that, Go back and see. Jim's just watching us.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm always kind of surprised by how the lack of curiosity of people. Like, people don't have curiosity. Like, in these types of discussions, it's like the 9 times out of 10, everyone just says, "Well, the scientist said you're wrong, so you're retarded." Like, that's just everyone's knee-jerk reaction.
Well,
and it's hard to get people to actually, like, I don't know. I just think
that's a disappointing thing to me about studying anything having to do with what I would call investigations into a combination of conspiracies and what you would either call liberty or freedom. There's a difference between liberty and freedom. Most people don't realize it. Did you say something, Jim?
No, I had my mic off.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I was just kind of listening to you guys.
Is that most people, in my opinion, not only are they fine with whatever authority gives them, that they're actually not okay without it. And that's disturbing to me. That if you remove the authority or disprove, especially if you disprove the authority, like, okay, this is what we thought and now this is wrong, that most people just fall into chaos and they can't hang. They're not like, oh crap, wow, we didn't think that was even questionable. Thanks for telling us. Instead, they're like, no, and they freak out and they like fucking want to pull their hair out and murder their neighbor because, I mean, that's what people just did to me on my Facebook page. A few, not very many, but a few people decided they were just going to razz I had to block one guy that I don't even know very well. I've never even met him in person because he couldn't. I kept telling him, look, you're on my thread, you're on my page. That's enough. I'm going to get the last comment. I'm going to have the last say in my own post on my own Facebook page. So stop being a jerk and get, everyone else isn't being a jerk, so get out of here. And he could not stop. He had to come back and like, ha ha ha, see, you didn't think of that one, did you? Ha 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 ha. And it's just like, it's not any kind of additional information. It's not a thoughtful answer. It's just like, see, and you're still stupid and you still don't respect authority, so that makes you even stupider. You're stupid. You're stupid. And like, this is the reaction I see on people when the chance to rely on authority is undermined. Then they defend authority even if authority is wrong because they can't have that. They can't not have the foundation of trusting that everyone that went before them was right. Well, I've been the opposite for a long, long time. I don't believe that people just have the answer, and I don't believe in stopping looking for the answer even once you found it. You keep solving the problem even if it's solved because more information might come from that. That's like the guy that's up there, Gerald Pollack at the Washington State University, is doing amazing research. You can look it up on YouTube into the 4th phase of water. For more than 100 years, people thought that water was fully understood and that it has 3 phases: ice, gas.
I read a book about that actually. The New Alchemists.
Yeah.
It's about, like, most of the book is about they're building. It was like back in the. Is Jim saying something?
No, he's muted.
Oh, is that? I think the stream is like.
Yeah, it is. If you look at this one, then it gets confusing. That's what I just did too.
It's about in the early 20th century when they're trying to built diamond presses to make artificial diamonds.
Uh-huh.
But that's one of the part of that book is a lot of it's like talking about like different states of matter and pressure and things like that. And like, I don't remember, like, not Ice 9. I think Ice 9 is like Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah, that's
right?
Kurt Vonnegut.
But it's like,
yeah.
I was surprised. Like, I didn't know that there was actually like these different.
Oh yeah,
really
sure,
is, like,
that's
Ice
exactly
7
what
and stuff.
You know,
He just kind of like made up his own like 9th one, but
he
they talk about like the different states of.
He was into that kind of stuff. But
yeah, that's a really cool. That's like one of the first like nonfiction books I ever read. And it was like, oh my god.
Yeah, I should check it out. It sounds right up my alley.
And it's just like, even if I feel like that book, even if you weren't that interested in diamonds, like I don't know if for some reason I was just like interested in diamonds for a couple years, like really intensely. But it's just like the way it's written is really fascinating, and it's like the way this guy thought to like build this diamond press was like inspired by this like mythological tale that he read about the ivy falling off and dying, and it's like, oh, he had this like dream. The diamond press kept exploding every time they did it, so he like had this like vision in his dream or something about. He was like inspired by this like myth of the dying ivy that he has to build the diamond press already broken, so that when it splits apart, it's already in different pieces.
Right.
And there's, it's just like interesting things like that. It kind of explains the thinking through and like the kind of creative solutions.
Well, to me, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So, okay, so if you're being black and selfish and conniving and narcissistic in your thinking, and you take it to the limit, you end up with some kind of personal communication to a being that's advising you to continue that all the more, allegedly, right? According to what we were talking about earlier. So just the same, if you're trying selflessly to solve a problem, or you just feel driven towards a project and you're not being self-centered and narcissistic about it, you work yourself to exhaustion and oftentimes still fall into a trance or a state of being that you become inspired and you have a vision or a dream and it solves the problem for you. So once again, there's this metaphysical outside influence that exists in this world that I'd say most people just pretend like it doesn't exist, and they know goddamn well it exists. They live as if it does exist when it happens, and then immediately act again. Like you'll thank God and literally stop and say a prayer where you avoid hitting the semi head on and completely forget about that and go back to being an atheist 5 minutes later. I've seen it, with my eyes, that kind of behavior.
No atheists in foxholes.
Yeah. Kurt Vonnegut said there's no atheists in foxholes, and that's true, but I think it's a crappy argument for God and a great argument against foxholes.
What?
He's making a case against war. He's saying,
okay.
He's saying, well, let's just get rid of foxholes then. We don't need them. Oh, look at here. This young lady's still giving us input here. JF had a good explanation and the Morse code stream for why Earth doesn't move under us when we're in a stationary helicopter. I think, ? I'm definitely going to re-listen to that stream tonight. And science is like a religion. Science is literally a religion. If you look up Helios and atomism and trace them back to their origins, and especially if you add everything I said about dilemma, Aleister Crowley, alchemy, you'll find that it's all a mask and a veneer over occulted religious practices, over ancient animism. Just that's why I was so hesitant to say yes, I'm just an animist, because you can believe everything's animated, but in my opinion, you better believe that it all comes from God and that some of it's been turned away from God. But that's just the way I look at it. I'm not trying to preach, but I mean it's a dangerous thing to give everything respect of life as if it were mankind. You're asking for it as soon as you do that, because then you and the cow have the same set of rights in court, and that's a serious problem in my opinion. You don't want to be on even ground with the river when it comes to who contaminated who.
From what I remember, their response about the helicopter in the live stream, wasn't it just like, well, Einstein said relativity is right, so space is squared, so you're wrong. It
was pretty close to that. To me, that that concept sums up my whole problem, is that we're always being told to believe something that our five senses can't detect. As far as I can tell, I don't see or feel or identify any curvature, even with investigating into high altitude balloon footage and watching people test the horizon line with radio frequency and lasers. I'm not seeing any evidence of a curve. Okay, so then they're saying, well, you're moving. And I say, well, how do we know? Well, it's hard to know. It actually could be either we're moving or the sky's moving. It's the same either way. I was like, well, it doesn't seem to me like we're moving. It seems like the sky's moving. So based on what am I supposed to evidentiate that I am moving? If I'm not, how do where's my point of reference outside of here that gives me a definite answer? So then you start to go look, Michelson-Morley, Michelson-Gale, Aries failure, and all these other tests that people have tried to do to say, see, there it is, movement, and it's zilch. There's no.
The problem is, though, that it's such a popular concept that Michelson-Morley was one of the biggest, best proofs against the ether of all time, and it was so it's in the popular consciousness that it did so well that most people aren't going to go actually read what happened.
Yeah, they don't understand exactly.
Bullshit.
Yeah, because then that's the same thing with, they call it Aries failure. So I'd say they took both of those experiments and they twisted the results to paint an outcome that still suited them when that's not.
I think it was just the momentum of the popularity of Einstein's theory and stuff. It just all happened so fast, and it just grew so quickly and had so much acceptance that it was just like, well, just we're not going to worry about that. Like, it just kind of all. It was like the momentum of the popularity of it gaining that no one really cared about it anymore.
The thing is, I found with that, Adam, is that they did that on purpose. Now, most people believe in a lot of coincidence and a lot of kind of waves of happening and not happening. Oh, well, Einstein got popular because some people, like a meme, like he said. I said, do you guys think in the debate? I said, do you guys think that the flat Earth is just a meme? That it's just a coincidence? Eric Dubay started talking about it a lot, and Mark Sargent started talking about it a lot, and this guy, Jared Campanelli, calls himself Jaredism. He jumped in and he started talking about it a lot, and then people started talking about it a lot, and the next thing you know, 60% of kids 18 to 24 believe it's flat, but the other 40% are like, we're not sure. Is that? And they're like, yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe that about Einstein at all. If you go look at the press and the evidence, it shows that they intentionally created Einstein as a cult figure. They said, we are proudly creating the cult of Einstein, and we hope that it lasts forever, or something like that. That's a paraphrase, but if you go find him. And that all coincides with the idea of creating a secular Jewish state after World War II. And they actually tried to make Einstein the first president of the state of Israel after World War II. And he refused. He told them, no, I'm not going to be your politician to do this. But they tried, because I saw that as it was a secular idea. Even though they used the excuse of it being God's chosen people, the idea was a secular nation, so it didn't have to be God or not God. But so the idea to use atomism as the excuse, to use the atomic bomb and the brilliance of Einstein and his amazing mathematical theories that supposedly explain the nature of the world, and then to plug him in as the president of the newfound Jewish state, because the Jews are the ones that are famous for being material and intellectual in all things. That's their reputation. I don't think that that's even debatable. That's what they're known for. Is that it's all the cult of Einstein is a real thing. And I said that in the debate.
See, I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like it's so weird. So many of the things that I agree with part of what you're saying, but for completely different reasons. I don't see any. I'm not very interested in history and politics and stuff. And you have that interest, and it's to me, I see all of this stuff happening without any of the political stuff. People just naturally are drawn to Einstein and just are they have a natural tendency oh, well, he is a scientist, and he's famous, so everything he says has to be right. They just already have that,
Well, I'd say it's a combination of
Like
both.
the cult of Einstein is just something that people do just because they worship celebrities and are already programmed.
I think that's true, along with the other thing that I said. I think they have to put a lot less effort into creating a cult out of anything than what people imagine. They imagine that you have to have, like, I don't know, like carnival barkers that have to hand out pamphlets or something, where that's not the case. People want to worship, naturally want to worship something, want to give their homage and their grace and their adoration to something naturally. And so then if you give them Einstein, you don't have to really give him a hard nudge. You know, you tell him he did good, you make him look silly with his tongue out and curly hair, so he's kind of eccentric, and it gives them an icon to worship. You know, just like they call, you know, the rock gods, the stars in Hollywood.
I actually have a theory about why Einstein is so popular. It's really, really simple.
Okay, what's that?
His last name, the syllables of his last name rhyme.
Yeah, that's a reasonable.
So people
assessment.
like this. Oh, Einstein.
Yeah.
It's not like Schwarzschild or, you know, like, who the fuck knows who that is?
Hey Jim, write that down on the list of fiction names, would you? Schwarzschild.
Well, Schwarzschild is one of the most famous relativists, but nobody fucking knows who Schwarzschild is.
Schwarzschild.
Yeah, see, I'd never heard of him. That's funny.
But Einstein, it's like Dr. Seuss. Einstein. It's just like a catchy thing that little kids can learn, and it's like it's just like his name is catchy. He's like a character. He has character design. It's like if you're designing a cartoon character, you make him look interesting and give him a catchy, rhymey name.
Yeah, but I'm a culture creation believer. I think that's what they did. I don't think that that's a coincidence.
They made up his name was already Einstein.
Was it? There's
like you were saying they chose that specific.
They could have.
See, but why do you need that part? That part seems superfluous to me.
Well,
why?
If you start to study
that,
if you study culture creation, it appears that there really are people outside of the system that we exist in that are making a plan above and beyond everything we could possibly imagine, and then slowly seeding and disseminating it to us, so that there's no natural culture, that all culture is seeded and created. Like the whole 60s counterculture movement, I can show you solid evidence that none of that shit is what it appears to be. And now you might be able to henpeck this or that and say maybe this, maybe that, but there's so much of it that they just decided they were going to do that. It wasn't an organic thing where the hippies decided, fuck war, we don't like war. They were the hippies. They manufactured the hippies. They were all fucking agents of the government, literally. And they if you look Dave McGowan up, I've got the book on audio. I'll give you my login to my Audible account if you want to listen to it. It's called Strange Scenes from the Canyon, talking about Laurel Canyon and about how all of the 60s rock stars are all from military intelligence families. Frank Zappa, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, all of them. David Crosby.
They're from military intelligence families?
All of them come from families that have high up military people as their relatives, their moms and dads. Like Jim Morrison's dad was the admiral that was in charge of the ship for the Gulf of Tonkin, which is the incident that got us into the Vietnam War. That was,
but I think even outside of that, like, I don't know, this is kind of a separate, like, just kind of a thing that I was thinking of. I think even in the context of real agreed upon historical things, like famous, like, evil dictators, I think Hitler, everyone knows who he is, and he's just in the popular imagination. And I think it's just because, well, a big part of it is because of what he did was like a huge deal. But I mean, there's other evil dictators who have done bad things that most people don't know anything about.
Right. And
I think a big part of it is just his name sounds catchy. Hitler, like anything that ends with an ER is just like catchy.
Oh, it is, and
it's like a thing that a little kid can even pronounce it. It's like Hitler.
Well, that's why all the names of the popular places you might need to go, for the most part, sound the same. You know, you can't call it Stapleton's office supplies. That's to be Staples. And if you look up sales and marketing, they'll tell you to choose a catchy.
But your inclination is that's like it's it's like a conspiracy designed to control you, that they're doing that rather than it's like people do have these names and the ones that are catchy happen to just like appeal, like catch your attention.
Yeah, as far as right down to the name, yeah, I'd say whether or not they're creating it to that degree, you could be pretty questionable on that. But I don't think so, because I don't think they've necessarily overlooked anything. I think they have an understanding and a metric of how societies and groups and tribes and kingdoms and families of people work that's beyond what we fathom to be capably understood. And I think it's been that way for a long, long time, not some new thing where now we have computers so we can run the numbers and get an answer. I think that's true too. But I think, and there's books about it. I mean, you know, there's books 120 years old of the British just talking about like, well, this is how we have to conquer kingdoms and manage and control peoples.
Did you see Lilo's comment?
Yeah. That's great. Pol Pot.
What did she say?
Oh, I'm sorry. She said, I'm not disagreeing with you guys, but Pol Pot has a super fun name, and most people don't seem to know much about him.
That's true. I don't remember ever being taught about Pol Pot. I remember I learned about Pol Pot in one of these like online discussions.
Oh, they never mentioned it.
And then the person who brought it up, she was like really shocked. She was like, "Wow, like your generation it's shocking." It was shocking to her that our generation didn't really know about Pol Pot.
Yeah, Pol Pot, Mao Tse-tung.
But even I think like
Stalin.
Once you hear that, it's like, oh, that like catches, it sticks in your mind. Pol Pot. It's just like it sounds like a catchy nonsense, like a Dr. Seuss poem. So.
She said something else. Oh, that's weird. Her name must be Lilo. Is it like Willow, only Lilo?
Oh, so she was saying the helicopter thing, he gave an explanation that didn't have anything to do with Einstein. From my memory, maybe there might have been different parts where that topic sort of came up, but from my memory, he was talking about relativity and stuff.
Yeah.
He may not have explicitly mentioned Einstein. But I could be remembering wrong.
Yeah, the idea that you've never heard of the Enoch theory is not outrageous. If you type Enoch flat Earth into YouTube, you just get a bunch of Rob Skiba stuff, and people have done lots and lots of extensive work studying and extrapolating and trying to explain what they think the Book of Enoch means. So this theory, either intentionally or accidentally, is completely hidden as far as a model and a concept, and it's also very new, only a few years old. And it's a small group of people doing it. So that's the real test of me playing this game, is to see now that they come knock it all down somehow. You know, and if so, do they make themselves obvious, or do they make themselves subtle so that it looks organic? You know, that's my curiosity. If we're onto something.
Do you think that your theory, would you call it? I don't know if you would call it a theory, your model. Do you think that it's falsifiable? Like, is it testable? Could you prove it wrong? Like, is it testable?
Yeah, I mean, it's built on the idea of trying as hard as we can to only use empirical observation to build it. You know, so that every little single nook and cranny of it stems back somewhere to this set of people at this time did this or that, etc. You know, that's why I tell people, if you really want to start to understand the Enoch model of a square flat Earth, the thing to do is to find a location where you can observe the moon over and over again and keep watching it for a month or more until one night it comes up and it was right in front of you almost exactly for 3 days in a row, and the next night you're sitting there expecting it to still be there, and instead it's 10 or 15 degrees farther south than it was in less than 24 hours.
Right, but have you looked in, like, I haven't, I remember you told me about that, and I was meaning to look into that. Have you looked into, like, any mainstream like confirmation of that effect, or is there? Do you know of any like
we haven't found anything
explanations
nobody
of like, maybe
it.
that is like a agreed upon thing that it does occur in astronomy that's well known, but they have some other.
We did search. I mean, I didn't like relentlessly. I didn't like start contacting astrologists. That's not the right word. Astronomers and astrologists would be good to ask too.
So, as far as you know, that is something that's pretty specific to like the Enoch flat Earth that you have heard about, or have you heard of this like outside of that?
You can predict how and when the moon is going to jump according to what I just described, according to the text of the Book of Enoch.
Okay.
Okay. So the main dude that was doing this will come into our Facebook group because he's kind of our de facto leader. He doesn't really like the idea that he's a leader, but he's still the one that's kind of pushing the envelope the most. And he'll come and say, "Hey, everybody, keep your eyes open because this is what's going to happen next." And it'll be 3 days before it happens, and then you'll observe it happen.
Right. But like you know how if you look at Mars, like as you see it in the sky, and then it's going, and then if you watch it, and then it goes like that, and it goes like that.
Yeah.
Like
retrogrades.
And that's like everyone agrees that's an observable thing.
Right.
Do you know if the moon skipping is a similar thing to that? That's well known, or is it something that you guys figured out, or you're not sure?
No, when the research I've done to try and find anyone identifying it, they just say, well, that's essentially that you're not seeing that. Or like if you take the apps,
they don't even think that it's a real effect.
No, if you take the apps that supposedly mirror everything, you know how they are. Like you go download the astronomy app.
So like okay, so this is the problem. I actually want to check this, but this is the problem. What clock do I use to check it? Because do I use the spherical Earth conspiracy clock, or do I use like if it's a fake thing and it's all controlled? How do I trust the timing? If the timing is based on a spherical model and the planets going around the sun, and they add a leap year and they add this and they add that, and there's daylight savings, the times that I check every day, if I check at midnight every night, that clock is not reliable because that's an artificial thing. You know what I mean?
Oh,
so what can I like? Would you consider that reliable, or would there be another way to kind of?
Well, we haven't gone so far as to try and to like change to analog wind-up clocks or something, but as far as the preliminary observation of watching the moon, the timing doesn't even have to be that perfect. It's really a matter of if it's around 7 p.m. every evening and you can see the moon, the sky.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So like if it should always, if we can see the moon right now, it should always be right here.
Yeah. It'll be, depending on how big the jump is, it'll be very obvious.
So you're saying I would see the moon like that every day, and then one day it would be like this. And then the other day it would go back.
So if this is say
can you see on the screen what you're showing?
So if this is the horizon, and the moon's coming up, and it's going away, it's coming up, same spot. It's going
so that's
away.
The next day.
So yeah, so then that happens for 2 weeks, and then it comes up here.
Just like suddenly one day.
Yeah, but it's not gradually moving like this. It's going almost exactly the same. Maybe it's very gradually moving. But then all of a sudden, boop, it's way over here the next time it comes up.
So how are you, okay, let's say if we were to test this, how do you figure out, I guess, okay, let's say you have a camera that's nailed to the wall. So you know it's not moving. You have it pointed somewhere. Let's say you just have a camera that's on this recording video every night.
Right.
That should prove that, right? That should test it.
Absolutely, yeah. And some people have done that.
So you could do that. You could do stop motion, or not stop motion. What is it called?
Time lapse. Yes.
Time lapse.
Yeah, I've thought already of building, like a dozen semi-indestructible solar-powered boxes, and like use high-quality cameras out of old cell phones or something.
You should do it
and build them and just put them all over the place.
You should do an experiment because you have like the attention of this like audience. You could be like well known for like experimentally showing this weird effect.
Well, yeah, and I don't see it.
It doesn't seem like that'd be that hard of an experiment.
No, it wouldn't. It's not that hard to do with that because we're all doing it with our naked eye and logging data to some degree. to, it's not the way that we're logging data is not like we're perfectly scientific by any means, because we're not being paid to do it. Most of us have jobs and obligations and things to do. The sky's constantly overcast and it's hard to get good readings and observations. Most of us aren't exactly timely people in general as human beings.
You're not making a case for your theory, though. You got to make it like
No,
this.
I
To
mean,
me, sounds like a cool thing that people could go do. Right, like.
Oh, I'm not trying to put us down. I'm being honest that that's the.
No, I'm just saying
and we're still
anyone watching
getting
this could
results.
go right now, set up their camera, and well, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone can do
No,
a
I
time-lapse
encourage
thing,
people. That's why I started to say it, because the first thing I tell people when they say, "Well, I don't
even if you
understand,"
just
what
had,
they
let's
say.
say you nailed something to the outside of your house that will hold your phone,
Mhm.
so you know that it's always going to be in the same spot.
Yeah.
And you just took a picture using that, lined it up to where you can take a picture. Just
That's-
do that every day.
I've got an app called Diatropa, and what I was doing, I haven't done it for probably almost a year because the sky's been really overcast, and I'm just not chasing the moon as hard as I used to be. But what I was doing was I had a certain spot I would stand in on the back porch, down one step, and looking to the southeast, and that's where I would take pictures of the moon. And Diatropa app has an angle of incidence to the horizon, of how far up you're pointing at an angle this way, and then it has the degrees this way, and it's on the screen. So you get the moon right on the X. It tells you how far off the horizon you are and what angle you are on the compass, what degree you are on the compass. And so then when you push the button, as long as you've got the moon centered, or the sun, if you're taking a picture of the sun, it's giving you're pointing your camera up at this angle and you're at this degree on the compass. So then you're getting a reasonable measure. So then if we all do that and dump data into a place where someone has got eyes and is sifting it and looking at it, then you start to correlate. Okay, so Sean shooting in the Pacific Northwest is seeing this, and so shooting in New Zealand or in South America is seeing this, and you start to eliminate a lot of data is really what I would say we've done. We've eliminated a lot of data. As far as being super accurate about gathering data, when people ask me about that more than a year ago in the group, I told them, look, we need dedicated people with money and equipment for a minimum of 1 year and preferably more like 3 years to pull this off, to say that we could bring it and say, fuck you, we have good data. We've taken enough measurements. We've done it accurately and effectively. Here's what you have to look at and not reject our idea. Because otherwise, especially the state of the world today, like I love that meme that's like Nikola Tesla's like, oh, I better go and get my stuff peer reviewed before I present any of these findings to the world, because it's a joke, right? Like, yeah, that's exactly what Tesla was doing. He's making sure before he published any of his work was to go check with 7 other scientists that he knew would respect him and make sure that they gave it the green light. Like, no, that's not how anything works. Like,
but even just like, okay, like when you describe this moon jump phenomenon, I don't think that you're just like inventing that. I think that you guys have actually observed this effect. So for me as a skeptic, or even just like, oh, that sounds like an interesting thing. Like maybe there is, whether it's evidence for flat Earth or not, that sounds like an interesting phenomenon.
Right.
I can go out myself. It doesn't matter. I know that I trust myself. Like I'm not gonna try to trick myself to prove you, right? So even if I don't convince anybody else, I can go do it. I can start tonight and just keep checking and see if the moon jumps. And then you guys also can predict when it's supposed to, like, oh, keep an eye out. The Book of Enoch says there's supposed to be a jump on this date or something, right?
Right.
So do you know when there's supposed to be a new one?
It just happened. So I'd have to look.
So they happen like every year,
No, it's like
months,
every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then sometimes like just now what happened, essentially what Sam said was that he's 10 days early. He's like, hey, look, the equinox came early. And he was right. Because what happens, Adam, is, okay, so the sun will be in the sky here. And the moon will be in the sky to the north of it. And they'll be going along doing their thing. And then the moon will jump and it'll be on the opposite side of the sun. So you're looking up in the sky, the sun's up, sun's setting, here's the moon. Sun's up, sun's setting, here's the moon. And then the sun's up, but the moon's on this side. The sun's up and it's setting, but now when the moon comes up, it's on this side. So it's jumped. It doesn't do that every time. Sometimes it just jumps and gets closer to the moon, or jumps and gets to the sun, or farther from the sun. But sometimes it jumps the track of the sun, so it's on the opposite side.
Okay, so this is from you going outside and looking at that, or
Yes.
from? Don't you think that there's already right now like stop motion of that you can go check? Like someone's already recorded the moon and sun doing that.
We've looked. I mean, you'd be surprised at the.
Like in other words, you could probably, if what you're saying is true, it's possible that you could go find someone just taking stop. I keep saying stop motion.
No, I know, time lapse.
Time lapse of how the sun and moon show up, just observational astronomy, and then you'd be able to take that and say, oh, now you see that weird part where it goes like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it seems like that's somewhere you could just find on YouTube or something.
Yeah, it's not. That's why I wanted to build the boxes, because you can find stuff, but it's not that long. It's not that redundant, and to be honest, I don't trust other people's work, because you can prove that. Like, okay, so the flat Earth model that's so popular is that the sun and moon are circling, right? That the Earth's shaped like this, and that the sun
Like a
and moon
pizza.
are doing this. That they get. So it gets close to winter, and this happens, and then it does this, and summer happens, and back, right? Okay. So, for one thing, the sun travels in a perfectly straight line at the equator on the equinox, or on the solstice. On the equinox. Pardon me, I'm getting tired now. So that doesn't make any sense in this circling model. The sun,
Why not? I don't understand.
Because it's always traveling in a circle. Okay, so here's the disk. North America is closer to the middle. South America and anything below the equator is closer to the outside ring. The North Pole is in the middle. The South Pole is the whole outside ring. This whole model falls apart if you start to look at it closely. If you were standing in the south of the equator looking south, you can see the Southern Cross in the sky, and you can see what they call Sigma Octantis, which is the same as Polaris, only to the south, and there's no star in the middle of it that's visible. So in the north, you look up, there's the center of the sky, there's Polaris, this fixed star that everything appears to be rotating around. In the circle model of the flat Earth, they say that that's true, but then on the outside edge, the south is everything outside of north. The south is in every direction away from north.
Okay.
And that kind of holds true with if you test a big round magnet, that north is the center pole of the magnet, and the whole outside ring is south. So they kind of try and extrapolate, or what do you call it? Confabulate or conflate those two things together. Like, see, it's like a magnet. It's like a round magnet. It doesn't work though. If you're standing south of the equator, looking south, you can see the Southern Cross. You can see Sigma Octantis. And what you have really is like this effect, okay? So the North Pole and Polaris and Sigma Octantis in the south, you have this effect. There's, in that picture that you drew, the north and south would have this going on.
What is this?
This is the spin of the stars.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So in the northern hemisphere, the stars...
That's just the
stars are rotating clockwise.
The stars themselves are actually rotating in that model, right?
Yes. And they're rotating clockwise. Let's see, is that right? If we go outside right now, look at Polaris. They're rotating counterclockwise, and then clockwise in the southern hemisphere.
So whether or not you're talking, regardless of which model, there is an objective fact of, if you go look at the way the celestial bodies appear to move, we're going to agree on that, right?
Right.
So you're essentially saying the way it appears to move is the way it's actually moving.
Yeah.
Instead of like, it looks that way because, if you're on a, what do you call, I don't know why I can't think of,
merry-go-round?
Yeah, but what's it on a playground? Is that a merry-go-round?
So, yeah, merry-go-round.
Well, that's anyways, it would work on a merry-go-round too. If you're on a merry-go-round, it appears that everything around you is It looks like the whole universe is just spinning around.
Right.
But if you get off of the merry-go-round and you look at it, the merry-go-round is spinning around.
Right. But this is the.
But we can agree that if you're on a merry-go-round, the way that the universe appears to be spinning around is objective. Like we can all agree that it looks like it's spinning around. But you're basically saying that what looks like it's happening is what's happening, and then if you stepped out the other side, that's the primary thing, is that the universe really is spinning around. So if you and using that analogy, if you stepped outside of the merry-go-round and watched it, you would be moving around the merry-go-round, right? Maybe you didn't follow my analogy.
Yeah, I think I got lost there. So to me, if you could step outside of the sky, all you would see is the same effect from the opposite side. The sky is literally moving. The Earth is not.
So that's a really good point. Okay, so most people would say the heavens appear to move because we're on a rotating ball.
Right.
So to disprove that, you would get off of the ball and watch the heavens, right?
Right. But see, I'd say most people can't.
But then how are you going to orient yourself? How are you going to know what you orient yourself towards, because you think you're oriented?
Right.
That's the problem. What do you synchronize everything?
That idea for people that believe in the infinite size of the universe would say, though, then the Earth is just going to vanish as soon as you get off of it and try and remove yourself at a perspective to look, because they say the universe is vast, whereas in the model I see that it's not vast. It's not some unbelievable amount of space. You could literally just get to the opposite side of the heavens and be looking at the top of a globe at that point, at the top of a globe of stars, or the bottom. And I think they would move like this. They'd move like this. I know most people can't even do that. But,
I see what you're saying. So if you flew over here and looked at the orb thing.
Yeah, look at Polaris from the top. Then you're still just going to see spinning stars that are in the shape of an orb. And this is actually a terrific argument to make people think about the real nature of what they tell us is happening, because how is it that despite all of the relative motion, or just the motion of the universe in general, that Jim's doing something. He's messing with us. How is it that we remain oriented on Polaris? They say that everything is moving. I mean, you've seen the.
Yeah, I don't understand. I haven't given hardly any thought into like observational astronomy of like how things actually appear from episode. I've never really thought it out.
If you look into it, what you end up with is an argument as to whether or not there is a precession of the equinoxes. So you end up having to study what astrologers and ancient astronomers and astrologers believed, and some of them believe that the stars are absolutely fixed and haven't moved at all in the sky for as long as we can measure, and some believe that slowly over a long period of time that the stars absolutely do move, and that is something that supports the idea that everything is actually moving the way that they think it is.
What was Jim saying?
Right. Can you read that question out loud?
No. Oh, her question?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see here. So, this girl's a trooper. How long have we been on here now? Okay, there's Pol Pot. JF and Andy said they haven't heard of Enoch either. It's frustrating that it's so hard to come across, even if you're actively researching flat Earth. Oh.
How many Enoch flat earthers do you think there are? 10? Hundreds?
Oh no, I mean there's more than 1,000 people in the group, but not very many of them are active. I'd say probably hundreds. There's probably hundreds of people looking into it.
But it's pretty new. Like how long? If you were finding info on it, how far back?
Maybe 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I must have scrolled way.
So that makes sense that she hasn't found information on it, and they didn't know really.
Yeah. I mean,
it makes sense that they wouldn't have really heard of that model.
Yeah, no, it's not only that, but I think that they intentionally muddy the water not because we're onto something so beautiful and special that they're trying to hide it, but that they're trying to muddy the water on everything. They brought the flat Earth out, and they're managing both sides. They have their figureheads like Mark Sargent, Eric DeBay, Patricia Steer, Jaron, all these guys that are, I don't want to go so far as to call them paid agents, but they definitely are the ones that are being promoted and allowed to talk on the regular radio and all kinds of things like that. And then you have a bunch of people that are definitely against them. I don't think it's a coincidence or like an accident or even serendipity that some rapper named Bob comes out talking about the flat earth, and coincidentally Neil deGrasse Tyson gives him the umbrage to give him a retort on live TV and drop the mic wearing a...
I didn't see that, but I kind of heard, I peripherally
to me, that's like if I came out and said something stupid and Trump tweeted about it. Like, who the hell am I? Even if I am a semi-famous rapper, if I say something, it shouldn't necessarily get the attention of someone who's, in our mind, at the figurehead top. Neil deGrasse Tyson right now is the most famous astrophysicist on Earth, right? So some rapper
in a pop
sense,
yeah.
He's the one everyone knows about. He's the
scientist.
To me, he's the token black man that Carl Sagan handed his mantle to. That's the way I see it.
Well, Bob is also part of the demographic that is really susceptible to becoming a flat earther.
Yes.
Young kids.
Yes, Bob. So Bob comes out.
More than
Jim's saying that Bob the rapper is the exact demographic to bring people into a contrary view of the universe, because that's all the people that are like young, stoned, probably somewhat rebellious, and they're looking to fight authority, looking for anything other than what their parents want them to do. So then, so that to me, that's true, Jim. That plays right back into the dialectical program of the whole thing. Oh, here's one more question. I'm an anti-vaxxer, and it's very hard to come across accurate info online that doesn't make anti-vaxxers sound insane. So I do know how it feels having the more legitimate info hidden like that. Yeah, I also am very much against vaccines and have been for a very long time, and I would recommend that you look up Greg Wyatt if you want more information. His son was healthy and then had vaccine injury, and he's still living with him now as an adult with severe autism. So Greg Wyatt is on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, I think it's ourvaccinessafe.org.
What about that story you told me about the guy who vaccinated his grandchildren, and he was a vaccine executive or something? Do you remember that?
Jim's asking a different story here, Adam, about a man who vaccinated his grandkids, and he was an executive. I don't know if I remember that or not. I do know that if you don't know that Raggedy Ann and Andy exist because of vaccinations, the man who created those dolls sent his daughter to school, and they vaccinated her without his permission, and then she fell. I don't remember if she fell ill and died, or if she just got super sick and then never fully recovered. But he created those dolls as a symbol of that struggle and suffering that he went through with the horrible surprise that his children had been vaccinated, or one of his children had been vaccinated against his will and suffered horrible injury from it. So, but no, I don't remember that other story, Jim. If I remember, I'll tell you. I don't remember.
It was something like the guy said, "Look, vaccines are safe. Here, I'll vaccinate my grandkids," and then one of them died like the next day, and then another one died like a couple weeks later.
Yeah, I don't remember that. Maybe that was in one of those broadcasts that we listened to.
Yeah, it could have been. Those vaccines make me mad.
Yeah, it's. I think most of the really horrible things that are wrong with the world are just too shocking for most people to put up with, so they just tolerate it anyway, and that's really sad to me. But
go along to get along.
It's true, yeah. Go along to get along is what most people do. And it's almost midnight. It's 11:20. I think we're going to have to call this thing. I'm getting tired. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting tired.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to say, Adam?
I don't think so. Is there any last comments?
Yeah, I don't know if I really wish I knew how to pronounce this girl's name. Lilo. Lilo?
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 Isn't
That's
that
what I
you
want to
said
say.
the first time when you said that's what it was? It seems like I had other things I was going to ask you, but I can't remember now what they were.
Yeah, well, we've been at this a long time now. I wouldn't be surprised if this is 5 hours long or something. So, but that's cool. That's RX Only Picture Show preliminary inaugural ass kicking. So,
Yeah. Like and subscribe.
Lilo, yeah, it is Lilo. That's funny because my girlfriend's name is Lee. So she says, yeah, there are thousands, millions of stories of children who've been killed or brain damaged from vaccines, and the ones who survive have severely compromised immune systems. It's true. People don't believe it, but it's true. Well, we really enjoyed your company. We're probably going to do this every Wednesday, Lilo, so you can let people know. And it's going to be different all the time. We might decide one day to set up a bunch of easels and start painting. Might set up a bunch of armature and start sculpting. We might sit here and throw on a bunch of stage lighting and start playing music. Who knows? Maybe we'll mud wrestle. Not impossible. So if we're gonna mud wrestle, we're gonna need to get all the way up to more than 1,000 subscribers, and we're gonna need those super chat money because that's what it's gonna take for me to get into a speedo to start mud wrestling. Is I'm gonna need someone to pay me. So, but yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll be around. And I'm gonna go ahead and hit the button on stop broadcast. And that's a wrap, folks.
See ya.
Okay, bye.
Okay.